Must recognize Palestine now. We must stop the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Ending the war must be our utmost priority. Peace now, peace immediately. We need peace. Thank you very much.
Halo, selamat malam Okezoners. Welcome di YouTube official Okezone dan welcome tentunya di Daily West. Dan hari ini menjadi hari yang spesial di malam hari ini karena kita bakal diskusi mengenai pidato dari Presiden Prabowo Subianto di markas PBB. Tentunya gue nggak sendiri karena gue bareng partner gue
Hafid Mardiansyah.
Dan kita kehadiran narasumber yakni Bang Andi. Selamat malam Bang.
Selamat malam
Sehat,
semuanya.
Bang?
Sehat, terima kasih undangannya ya.
Sama-sama. Nah malam ini Bang, kenapa tadi saya bilang spesial?
Iya.
Karena kita ngomongin soal pidato Presiden Prabowo. Kalau kemarin kan Pak Jokowi ini hadir secara virtual, kemudian ini kehadiran Presiden Prabowo di markas PBB tentunya ini kayak mematahkan secara langsung udah datang hadir. Gimana tanggapannya Bang Andi?
Terima kasih Mbak Ersa sama Mas Hafid. Ini adalah suatu kesempatan baik bagi kita ya untuk mempelajari juga menyaksikan bagaimana sebenarnya peran Indonesia dalam tingkat global ya. Dan saya pikir ini adalah sesuatu yang sangat spesial. Kenapa saya katakan spesial? Karena momentum sidang umum PBB ini adalah momentum ke-80 umurnya gitu ya. Jadi selain itu ada isu-isu krusial lainnya yang menjadi sorotan publik internasional. Soal Palestina, soal perang dagang antara China Amerika Serikat ya. Dan juga bagaimana konflik-konflik di wilayah-wilayah lain yang itu menjadi perhatian publik tentang eksistensi dari PBB sendiri gitu. Jadi sebenarnya kehadiran Prabowo pada sidang PBB kali ini adalah sesuatu yang spesial menurut saya ya. Meskipun kritik terhadap eksistensi PBB sendiri itu menjadi perhatian publik internasional, tidak hanya di Indonesia, hampir di banyak-banyak negara maju sedang mendiskusikan bagaimana masa depan PBB, bagaimana masa depan organisasi internasional ini, begitu.
Tapi Mas, urgensi utama dari sidang PBB sendiri kalau bagi Indonesia itu apa sih sebenarnya? Ya,
kita jangan lupa ya bahwa politik luar negeri kita itu dilandasi kepada konstitusi, Undang-Undang Dasar 45 kita ya, yang memang memberikan mandat kepada negara, kepada pemerintah untuk aktif dalam forum-forum internasional, dalam diplomasi ya, dalam rangka untuk menjaga ketertiban dunia. Mempromosikan perdamaian. Ini kan menjadi sesuatu yang substansi di dalam Undang-Undang Dasar kita, Undang-Undang Dasar 45, dan itu menjadi landasan penting di dalam kebijakan luar negeri Indonesia gitu. Jadi saya pikir ketika kita melihat bagaimana politik luar negeri Indonesia, maka jangan lupa bahwa kita punya dasar dalam hal inilah Undang-Undang Dasar 45 yang melandasi semua kebijakan politik kita gitu Mas Hafid.
Berarti kehadiran Presiden Prabowo Subianto secara face to face itu sangat penting sekali ya.
Betul,
Bang Andi?
Betul. Ya meskipun tadi bahwa kita banyak mempertanyakan ya soal efektivitas, efisiensi dan urgensinya, tapi jangan lupa bahwa Prabowo sebagai seorang presiden, beliau punya tanggung jawab kenegaraan bahwa dia harus menjalankan amanah konstitusi, bahwa Indonesia dalam hal ini adalah negara yang sejak awal memang aktif dalam diplomasi terutama bagaimana kita mendorong perdamaian ya. Kita sendiri kan sudah menyatakan bahwa kita anti kolonialisme.
Iya.
Jadi
Iya,
sebenarnya
Dari awal ya.
dari awal. Jadi bahwa partisipasi kita di PBB ini sebaiknya memang kita lestarikan dan kalau bisa kita tingkatkan pengaruh kita di forum multilateral. Jadi seakan-akan bukan kita tidak hanya sekedar hadir gitu loh, bahwa kita perlu mengambil kesempatan ini. Saya pikir itu Mbak Ersa.
Ngomongin tadi soal anti kolonialisme, kita saksikan dulu karena dari salah satu presiden terdahulu juga membawakan ini di PBB juga
Sidang
ya.
PBB juga.
Jadi kita akan lihat Viti langsung terkait bagaimana jajaran dari presiden kita yang terdahulu sampai Presiden Prabowo Subianto menyampaikan pidatonya.
Presiden pertama Indonesia, Soekarno, menjadi pemimpin Indonesia yang pertama kali berpidato di depan Perserikatan Bangsa-Bangsa. Bung Karno berpidato di Sidang Umum ke-15 PBB di New York pada 30 September 1960. Meski telah 65 tahun lalu, namun pidatonya yang mengangkat tema membangun dunia baru atau To Build the World New menjadi salah satu memori dunia.
Humanity, the world over, cries out for peace and rest, and those things are within our gift. Do not withhold them, lest this body be discredited and deserted. Our task is not to defend this world, but to build the world anew. The future, if there is to be a future, will judge us on the record of our success at this task. Do not, I beg you, older established nations, underestimate the force of nationalism.
Selain Presiden Soekarno, Presiden Soeharto berpidato 2 kali dalam Sidang Umum PBB, yaitu pada tahun 1992 dan 1995. Pada tahun 92, Soeharto sampaikan pesan Jakarta yang tak hanya mewakili Indonesia, tetapi juga 108 anggota gerakan non-blok. Lantaran saat itu baru saja diadakan KTT ke-10 Gerakan Non-Blok di Jakarta pada 1 hingga 6 September 1992. Estafet pidato Presiden RI di Sidang Umum PBB selanjutnya dipegang Presiden kelima RI Megawati Soekarno Putri. Megawati 2 kali hadir dalam Sidang Umum PBB yakni pada 2001 dan 2003. Pidato Megawati menegaskan perlunya reformasi mendasar dalam PBB. Presiden ke-6 RI Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono cukup aktif dalam Sidang Umum PBB. Selama masa kepemimpinannya yang berlangsung 10 tahun, SBY hadir 6 kali dalam Sidang Umum PBB. SBY pertama kali berpidato di forum internasional pada Sidang Umum ke-62 tahun 2007. Sementara pada saat hadir di Sidang Umum PBB tahun 2014, SBY menyelipkan peribahasa Indonesia dalam pidatonya.
I am neither a utopian nor a blind idealist in understanding international relations. But I do believe that with strong commitment and political will, we can make the impossible possible. As we say in Indonesia, di mana ada kemauan, di situ ada jalan. Where there is a will, there is a way. We must push the frontiers. Thank you.
Presiden ke-7 RI Joko Widodo tidak pernah hadir langsung di Sidang Umum PBB. Jokowi lebih memilih menyampaikan pidato secara virtual pada 2020 dan 2021, di mana saat itu pandemi COVID-19 masih melanda dunia. Jokowi menyoroti solidaritas global, penanganan pandemi, serta kerjasama dalam pemulihan ekonomi. Absennya Jokowi secara fisik di New York selama 10 tahun membuat kehadiran Presiden Prabowo pada Sidang Umum PBB begitu bermakna.
Nah, Okezone, tadi kita udah sama-sama menyaksikan langsung bagaimana dari Presiden Soeharto kemudian sampai ke Presiden Jokowi. Tentunya Bang Andi ini kan punya ritme atau perihal yang dibawakan ini berbeda-beda. Tapi sebelum minta tanggapan Bang Andi nih, Mas Kafid, kita mengingatkan kepada semua Okezoners bahwa jangan lupa nanti pukul 8 malam tentunya kita akan ada streaming untuk pidato Presiden Prabowo. Jadi kita bisa sama-sama menyaksikan apa yang disampaikan oleh Presiden Prabowo Subianto di markas PBB ataupun di hadapan dunia. Nah kembali nih, karena Mas Kafid kayaknya udah pengen banyak bertanya ya.
Iya Mas Kafid.
Iya Mas Kafid, kita langsung tanya aja. Tadi rentetannya sudah banyak ya, kita lihat.
Melihat deretan presiden-presiden yang sudah hadir di sidang PBB, kalau melihat ritmenya dari awal sampai yang terbaru Presiden Jokowi waktu virtual, itu gimana, Mas?
Ya, ini menarik ya menurut saya bahwa seorang presiden itu adalah seorang individu manusia yang mereka sebenarnya juga punya preferensi masing-masing. Satu preferensi, kedua juga soal latar belakang sebenarnya. Jadi kita melihat perbedaan antara Pak SBY, Presiden SBY dengan Presiden Jokowi, bagaimana Presiden SBY itu sangat aktif dalam berdiplomasi. Bahkan kalau tidak salah beliau punya prinsip bahwa 1,000 friends, 0 enemy. Kalau bisa punya punya ribuan teman, 0 enemy gitu kan. Jadi saking aktif itu beliau punya filosofi kebijakan luar negeri seperti itu. Cuman ketika kita masuk transisi ke Pak Jokowi, ya, sepertinya itu mulai menurun karena beliau sendiri sepertinya lebih prefer untuk menggunakan pendekatan bilateral. Karena kita lihat bahwa Indonesia sangat dekat dengan China, dengan Tiongkok gitu kan. Dan kita lihat juga bahwa pada saat Presiden Jokowi begitu masif investasi China di Indonesia, dan itu seperti kita membayangkan bahwa kita sudah sedikit mengunci hubungan kita dengan Tiongkok dan lebih memprioritaskan pendekatan bilateral daripada multilateral gitu ya. Karena pada saat yang sama memang semua sudah sedikit mengkritik bagaimana efektivitas pendekatan multilateral ketika Presiden Trump sendiri ya, karena pada edisi pertama ya, Trump edisi pertama kan sudah mengatakan China trade war kan, China trade war. Nah itu mungkin pada saat itu orang melihatnya wah PBB kok tidak berbuat apa-apa gitu kan.
Seperti tidak bertaji.
Akhirnya orang berpikir ternyata multilateral tidak berfungsi dengan baik gitu untuk mengantisipasi itu.
Kalau kita ngomongin dari awal nih, Presiden Soekarno ngomongin soal kolonialisme, yang kita ingat banget Presiden Soekarno selalu menekankan jangan pernah menganggap remeh bangsa-bangsa yang baru merdeka. Itu spirit awal-awal kita meraih kemerdekaan kan sebenarnya. Kalau dari Mas Andi sendiri, pandangan soal Presiden Soekarno dia gimana?
Saya pikir ini adalah sesuatu yang kita perlu garis bawahi dalam situasi sekarang ya, bahwa apa yang disampaikan oleh founding fathers kita, Presiden Soekarno ini sebenarnya sangat relevan dalam konteks sekarang. Kenapa saya katakan sangat relevan? Pertama kita lihat bangkitnya kekuatan negara-negara berkembang dalam kerjasama BRICS ya. Nah ini kan kita membayangkan bahwa pernyataan Presiden Soekarno saat itu dengan mendorong kerjasama Asia Afrika ya, kemudian negara-negara berkembang pada saat itu justru sekarang menemukan momentumnya gitu. Kenapa menemukan momentumnya? Karena pada saat yang sama negara-negara maju yang selama ini menjadi pendonor, menjadi pendukung seperti Amerika Serikat, mereka sedang mengalami juga krisis di dalam negeri kan gitu. Krisis hutang, ya, soal pendapatan yang juga melemah, belum lagi soal krisis energi juga gitu ya. Jadi ini menjadi momentum sebenarnya bahwa negara-negara berkembang bersatu, solidaritas ya. Makanya kemarin kok BRICS begitu semakin eksis ya, bahkan kita sudah bergabung di sana.
Jadi anggota tetap ya.
Betul, Arab Saudi juga sudah ikut bergabung. Artinya negara-negara yang tergabung dalam organisasi ini, dalam BRICS ini bukan negara-negara yang mungkin tidak bisa kita pinggirkan. Mereka punya pengaruh global ya, termasuk.
Kedepannya BRICS bakal signing atau?
Saya pikir BRICS ini akan menjadi semakin besar. Karena pada saat kita saksikan sekarang menurunnya pengaruh negara-negara maju ya, Sementara problematika di negara-negara berkembang tuh semakin kompleks kan.
Iya.
Nah inilah yang sebenarnya menjadi fokus juga di dalam pertemuan sidang umum PBB ini. Orang bertanya-tanya bagaimana kemampuan PBB untuk menyelesaikan masalah-masalah yang kita hadapi sekarang ini. Karena kita catat misalkan pertama, yang selama ini menjadi donatur PBB ya, salah satu yang utama adalah Amerika Serikat. Dan Trump sudah memutuskan untuk mengurangi pendanaannya. Ya. Kedua, tidak hanya soal dana. Trump memutuskan keluar dari WHO. Trump memutuskan keluar dari UNESCO. Bahkan terakhir Trump menolak adanya UN SDGs, yaitu tujuan pembangunan global yang selama ini menjadi target bagi pemerintah untuk mencapai pembangunan berkelanjutan. Ini alarm berbahaya sebenarnya buat multilateralisme sebenarnya. Nah, makanya sebenarnya relevansi BRICS menjadi suatu alternatif way, semacam jalur alternatif bagi negara berkembang untuk tadi menggaungkan suaranya ya, kemudian aspirasi mereka juga gitu Mas Hafid.
Ini bisa jadi momentum untuk negara berkembang seperti Indonesia gitu kan, untuk bisa meningkatkan posisinya di. Kita lanjut nih ke presiden kedua Pak Soeharto. Pak Soeharto tadi kalau kita ngelihat lebih ngomongin soal penekanan bahwa Indonesia adalah negara non-blok. Pertanyaannya kan abis KTT kan, lagi gencar-gencarnya. Pertanyaannya, apakah semangat non-blok dari Indonesia itu masih terjaga sampai sekarang, atau memang non-blok rasa ada ke kiri kanan gitu loh?
Iya. Ini menarik ya sebenarnya. Menarik. Kenapa saya katakan menarik? Karena kita lihat juga bahwa Pak Presiden Jokowi pada saat saya katakan tadi bahwa kita cenderung dekat dengan Tiongkok dekat dengan Tiongkok. Nah, justru sekarang ini kita lihat bagaimana Pak Presiden Prabowo sedang memainkan peran dia ya untuk menunjukkan bahwa Indonesia itu dalam posisi yang independen. Kita tidak terikat dengan China, Tiongkok maupun dengan Amerika Serikat ya. Makanya kita bisa masuk ke sidang PBB, kita juga masuk ke BRICS gitu ya.
Keuntungan non-blok itu ya.
Iya, keuntungan non-blok. Kita bisa ketemu dengan negara manapun, negara manapun. Artinya bahwa Indonesia itu fleksibel. Karena kita memang pada prinsipnya punya kepentingan untuk bagaimana memajukan tadi perdamaian, kemudian ketertiban dunia. Jadi bukan persoalan hanya egosentris kita sebagai negara, tapi memang ada mandat yang perlu kita penuhi dari konstitusi kita gitu.
Tadi sudah ngomongin soal Pak Soeharto. Nah, yang cukup menarik karena ini juga bicara soal tidak hanya apa yang disampaikan, tapi sosok Megawati Soekarno Putri, seorang perempuan yang 2 kali, tahun 2001 kemudian 2003 datang lagi menyampaikan pidatonya. Bagaimana Bang Andi melihat sosok Megawati menyampaikan pidatonya, apalagi dia adalah perempuan, kemudian pesannya ini mengguncang dunia nggak sih Bang?
Iya betul. Ini menurut saya menarik ya, karena kata-kata reformasi ya itu kan disampaikan secara tegas oleh Presiden Megawati. Bahkan kalau kita katakan bahwa beliau adalah satu-satunya presiden Indonesia ya sampai hari ini yang berpidato di sidang yang dihadiri oleh ratusan negara ini sebenarnya merupakan bentuk dari perhatian Indonesia kepada organisasi internasional. Dan kita tahu bahwa saat itu Presiden Megawati memang masih membawa amanah reformasi dari negara kita sendiri kan. Beliau kan saat itu adalah presiden yang belum jauh dari masa reformasi. Jadi memang ada amanah penting bahwa reformasi juga perlu dilakukan dalam organisasi internasional. Nah, dalam konteks reformasi ini, saya pikir ini yang perlu kita dorong. Reformasi terhadap organisasi internasional yang kita sebut sebagai Perserikatan Bangsa-Bangsa ini. Kenapa saya katakan kita perlu dorong ini? Kita ambil contoh misalkan ketika dalam seminggu ini ya PBB bersidang tentang Palestina ya, itu hampir sebagian besar negara setuju bahwa ada solusi terhadap 2 negara, yaitu Israel sebagai negara berdaulat dan juga Palestina sebagai negara berdaulat ya. Tapi pada saat yang sama ya justru Amerika Serikat menolak gitu ya.
Veto ya.
Menolak gitu. Jadi ini unik menurut saya bahwa dalam semangat demokratisasi, organisasi internasional di mana semua suara harus didengar. Tetapi ketika kita bicara soal Palestina, ya justru hanya ditolak oleh segelintir negara yang diwakili oleh Amerika Serikat gitu
Yang
kan.
mengaku paling demokratis.
Paling demokratis.
Justru tidak demokratis.
Pertanyaan di mana demo demokrasinya gitu kan.
Iya.
Padahal kalau kita bicara soal demokrasi ada soal hak asasi manusia, soal kemanusiaan ya kan. Soal bagaimana melindungi anak-anak dan perempuan gitu kan. Tapi enggak gitu ternyata. Ini menjadi tantangan gitu.
Kalau bahasa Gen Z mah ini si paling demokrasi.
Nah, itu makanya. Jadi reformasi ini menurut saya perlu kita seriuskan ya. Kalau kita ingin mempertahankan PBB ini.
Iya, benar-benar. Tapi terakhir kan Presiden ya SBY kemudian tadi udah kita dengar dan terakhir Pak Jokowi ini. Apakah ketika Pak Jokowi hadir secara virtual ini mengurangi pesan momentum pesan yang disampaikan, karena kita tahu presiden-presiden sebelumnya langsung datang gitu.
Iya, betul ya. Memang betul ya, pada saat beliau mungkin nggak datang salah satu COVID ya, tapi sebenarnya periode beliau kan panjang ya, 10 tahun ya. Dari 2014 ya, sampai 19 ke 2024 ya. Artinya sebenarnya momentumnya panjang sekali untuk bisa terlibat aktif, tapi ternyata tidak seperti yang kita harapkan gitu kan. Dan ini menjadi catatan sebenarnya. Dan konsekuensinya Indonesia punya ruang gerak yang terbatas sebenarnya dalam konteks diplomasi pada masa Jokowi. Makanya saya katakan tadi kita lebih dekat dengan Tiongkok gitu. Padahal sebenarnya banyak potensi-potensi lain juga yang bisa kita maksimalkan gitu kan. Ada Australia di sana, ada juga Jepang di sana kan gitu, ada Korea gitu ya. Meskipun memang sudah berjalan juga, tapi kelihatan yang di permukaan kan kita lebih dekat dengan Tiongkok gitu kan.
Kita analogikan pemerintahan Pak Jokowi ini kayak yang kalau main mending sama Besti aja. Nggak sama yang lain-lain gitu ya. Mending sama Besti aja deh, pasti gitu ya.
Apa ini main aman ini?
Main aman, mungkin juga main aman. Tapi setidaknya ya itu yang kita lihat di permukaan kan, bahwa Indonesia kok kelihatannya mainnya di situ-situ aja gitu kan. Padahal kalau kita mau bicara soal tantangan ekonomi misalkan, ekspor kita ya, kita perlu meningkatkan ekspor ke pasar-pasar non-tradisional dong, ya kan? Gimana kita mau bicara soal pertumbuhan ekonomi kan? Eksportir kita hanya fokus ke negara-negara yang mungkin selama ini jadi pasar kita, tapi kita nggak berupaya untuk menjajaki pasar-pasar non-tradisional lainnya seperti Eropa Timur gitu kan? Nah, itu kan perlu
gandum juga perlu di Eropa Timur ya.
Iya, perlu intensitas yang tinggi lah menurut saya gitu.
Nah, karena tadi kita sudah ngomongin soal jajaran dari Presiden Soeharto sampai, silakan Bang minum dulu, karena kita masih live nih panjang, masih panjang ini Bang. Jadi Okezone juga masih menanti. Nah, kita saksikan dulu Bang VT dari Presiden Prabowo Subianto yang menyampaikan pidatonya, tentunya dengan bahasa Inggris di markas PBB kemarin.
His Excellency President Emmanuel Macron, President of the French Republic, His Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, Foreign Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as the co-chairs of this distinguished meeting. Co-chairs, Excellencies, distinguished representatives of the United Nations, I wish to extend our deepest appreciation and highest regards to the governments of France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for their leadership in convening this important deliberation. It is with a heavy heart that we recall the ongoing unbearable tragedy in Gaza. Thousands of innocent lives, many of them women and children, have been killed. Famine looms. Human catastrophe is unfolding with our eyes. We condemn all acts of violence against innocent civilians. Therefore, it is today with dignity that we gather to take our historical responsibility. This responsibility speaks not only to the fate of Palestine, but also to the future of Israel, and also the very credibility of the United Nations. We condemn all violence against innocent civilians. Therefore, Indonesia once again reiterates its commitment to the two-state solution in the Palestine problem. Only this two-state solution will lead to peace. We must guarantee statehood for Palestine, but Indonesia also declares that once Israel recognizes the independence and the statehood of Palestine, Indonesia will immediately recognize the state of Israel, and we will support all guarantees for the security of Israel. The New York Declaration has provided a peaceful and just pathway towards peace. Statehood must mean peace. Recognition must mean a real chance towards lasting peace. It must be a real peace for all sides, for all parties. Distinguished Excellencies, we commend the leading states of the world that have taken this principled step. France, Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, Portugal, and many other leading countries of the world have taken a step on the right side of history. The recognition of the state of Palestine is the right step on the right side of history. To those who have yet to act, we say, history does not stand still. We must recognize Palestine now. We must stop the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Ending the war must be our utmost priority. We must overcome hatred, fear. We must overcome suspicion. We must achieve the peace that is necessary for the human family. We are ready to take our part in this journey towards peace. We are willing to provide peacekeeping forces. Thank you very much. Peace. Peace now. Peace immediately. We need peace. Thank you very much.
Ya, oke, Okezone, kita sama-sama dengar tadi Presiden Prabowo Subianto menggaungkan ataupun menyampaikan pidatonya di hadapan dunia, dan banyak sekali Bang Andi hal-hal menarik di sini. Tapi satu hal pembuka sebelum dari Mas Kafid juga kayaknya udah banyak juga yang pengen ditanyakan, apalagi ngomong soal peace. Tadi dia dari Presiden Prabowo Subianto sempat saya catat, only this two-state solution will lead to peace. Dia menyampaikan hal itu. Bagaimana tanggapan Bang Andi soal ini? Dan banyak yang memuji perkataan dari Presiden Prabowo Subianto ini.
Ya, saya juga ikut mengapresiasi ya bahwa intonasi kemudian pernyataan yang disampaikan dengan penekanan ini membuktikan ketegasan Indonesia bahwa kita menginginkan perdamaian di antara Israel dengan Palestina. Dan itu saya katakan tadi bahwa ini sesuai dengan mandat konstitusi kita. Nah, memang yang jadi perhatian justru ketika beliau menyampaikan deklarasi New York gitu ya. Ini menurut saya agak paradoks ya. Menyebutnya sebagai deklarasi New York, tapi Amerika Serikat sendiri tidak mendukung terhadap two-state solution ini gitu kan. Nah, tapi yang menarik ya bahwa konferensi tentang Palestina ini juga membuktikan bahwa sudah ada rekognisi ya, kesetaraan antara negara berkembang dengan negara maju. Kan tuan rumahnya, inisiatornya adalah Arab Saudi dan Prancis gitu kan. Nah ini kan berarti bahwa negara berkembang juga sudah direkognisi kedaulatannya dan pengaruhnya dalam konteks global. Dan di sana sudah ada United Kingdom, Inggris, ya, Portugal, Kanada, Australia. Nah ini negara-negara yang memang selama ini memiliki pengaruh terhadap konstelasi politik terutama di Barat ya, gitu
Tapi mungkin banyak Okezoners yang belum paham nih, sebenarnya two-state solution tuh seperti apa? Karena kan kita masih hanya bahas istilah, tapi sebenarnya banyak Okezone yang mungkin belum tahu gitu kan.
Iya, benar-benar. Iya, terima kasih Mas Afi. Jadi two-state solution itu adalah solusi dua negara di mana kita mengakui Israel sebagai negara berdaulat dan Palestina sebagai negara berdaulat yang itu di mana Palestina dengan wilayah sekarang West Bank ya, kemudian ada juga
tepi barat itu.
Gaza ya, tepi barat itu adalah wilayah utuh yang itu harus diakui oleh Israel. Nah itu yang sedang dilakukan oleh Israel kan, menduduki Palestina, kemudian sekarang Israel melakukan penyerangan terhadap penduduk Gaza ya, dan ada juga sekarang yang jadi juga perhatian tuh soal klaim genosida. Dan PBB sudah menyatakan dan secara resmi bahwa laporan di lapangan menemukan demikian gitu kan. Nah artinya bahwa kalau kita memang konsisten dengan solusi dua negara ini kita selesaikan dengan baik, termasuk juga ketika genosida ini kita bawa ke Mahkamah Internasional, maka Benjamin Netanyahu dan juga kabinetnya itu harus diadili gitu. Tegas ya bahwa kita tadi sudah disampaikan oleh Presiden ya bahwa kalau Israel mengakui kedaulatan Palestina, Indonesia juga akan mengakui kedaulatan Israel. Saya pikir ini fair ya. Tapi pada saat sama kita nggak boleh lupa bahwa selama Benjamin Netanyahu ini tadi sudah ada pelanggaran-pelanggaran hukum internasional yang harus kita tegakkan aturan-aturan itu gitu.
Beberapa kali Presiden Prabowo menyampaikan peace now gitu.
Yes,
jadi
we must recognize Palestine now. Ada now-nya itu selalu berulang banyak sekali gitu. Memang harus sekarang kah atau seperti apa?
Iya, saya pikir gini, ini kan banyak kritik juga ya bahwa orang mengatakan rekognisi hanya simbolik ya, simbolik gitu kan. Karena pada saat yang sama di Gaza sendiri kan kelaparan masih terjadi, kemudian pembantaian terhadap masyarakat sipil, bahkan rumah sakit kan sudah terbatas.
Termasuk rumah sakit Indonesia.
Iya betul. Nah, tapi paling tidak kita melihat bahwa pengakuan dari negara-negara ini adalah the beginnings gitu ya, bagian awal. Saya juga terharu ketika kemarin Al Jazeera menayangkan kedutaan Palestina di United Kingdom menaikkan bendera Palestina. Jadi kan ketika negara mengakui Palestina, maka artinya ada jalinan hubungan diplomatik yang akan akan dilakukan. Nah, nanti muncullah kedutaan-kedutaan. Nah, dari sini kita berharap adanya nanti bantuan kemanusiaan, ada komunikasi diplomatik ya, terutama juga mungkin nanti ada bantuan terhadap pendidikan dan lain-lain. Saya pikir dengan rekognisi ini kita anggap sebagai awalan yang perlu kita perjuangkan sehingga Palestina tidak sendiri dalam memperjuangkan eksistensi dan kemanusiaan dalam hal ini sebenarnya.
Presiden Prabowo juga bilangnya akan mengirim bantuan pasukan perdamaian.
Perdamaian, betul.
Itu kalau boleh bilang sebelum kita ngomong komentar dulu,
Iya.
mekanismenya seperti apa? Mereka akan ngapain aja di situ? Dan
Betul.
di Indonesia, pasukan Indonesia bakal ngapain aja di situ?
Iya, sepanjang yang saya tahu bahwa pengiriman pasukan perdamaian ini nggak bisa semata-mata karena Indonesia mau mengirimkan gitu.
Iya, ya kan pasti ada
Betul,
mekanismenya.
tapi harus ada penugasan dari
Iya.
PBB. Penugasan dari PBB ketika semua negara sepakat ya untuk mengirimkan ini, maka Indonesia bergabung di sana. Nah, tentu sesuai dengan labelnya peacekeeping force ya, peacekeeping mission. Jadi misinya misi perdamaian gitu. Jadi bukan misi perang gitu. Ya kita melindungi fasilitas-fasilitas publik di sana yang itu menjadi kepentingan masyarakat. Kita memfasilitasi para pejabat publik dalam negosiasi dan lain-lain. Jadi memang betul-betul misinya adalah misi untuk perdamaian. Dan kita sudah melakukan itu di beberapa negara yang seperti Lebanon, ya juga Kongo kan.
Ya, Lebanon dan
Indonesia aktif sekali.
Iya.
Gitu.
Dan kalau kita lihat ya Bang, sepanjang Pak Presiden Prabowo ini memimpin, dia kan konsisten sekali ya menggaungkan bantuan untuk Palestina. Dia bilang, bahkan sempat bilang kalau boleh nanti sempat ada wacana mereka mengungsi
Pulau Galang.
Iya, seperti
iya.
itu. Gimana Abang melihat konsistensi dari Presiden Prabowo Subianto sampai akhirnya di hadapan dunia juga sampaikan itu lagi?
Ya, kalau kita melihat Pak Prabowo sebagai representasi dari rakyat Indonesia, saya pikir itulah semangat rakyat kita ya. Jadi rakyat Indonesia itu kan orangnya saling menyayangi ya, suka solidaritas dan sosial
dermawan. Paling dermawan.
Iya, jadi saya pikir apa yang disampaikan oleh Pak Presiden Prabowo itu juga cerminan dari apa yang menjadi aspirasi masyarakat. Dan tidak salah tentunya ini adalah sebuah ketegasan sekaligus juga menunjukkan kepada dunia bahwa Indonesia itu hari ini memang proaktif ya terhadap masalah-masalah internasional gitu.
Tapi Abang setuju nggak dengan penyediaan Pulau Galang itu untuk?
Ya, saya pikir itu kan opsi dan kita tidak melihat opsi itu sebagai satu-satunya jalan dalam menyelesaikan masalah ini. Dan sudah banyak disampaikan juga oleh baik itu DPR maupun Kemlu sendiri ya. Itu semua bergantung juga kepada pemerintah Palestina ya. Dan juga mungkin komunitas internasional kan gitu. Karena kan kita memberikan bantuan nggak perlu memaksakan diri juga gitu kan. Mungkin di dalam negeri kita juga sedang banyak tantangan sosial yang mungkin perlu kita segera selesaikan. Tapi kalau memang kita diminta untuk membantu, tidak dalam arti bahwa Pulau Galang ini seperti mengikuti skenarionya Benjamin Netanyahu ya. Kan katanya bahwa Indonesia mau menampung penduduk Palestina karena Palestina mau dikosongkan katanya.
Iya, itu kan jadi kontroversi juga kan.
Iya, kontroversi.
Warganya sengaja diungsikan supaya bisa diambil alih tanahnya.
Benar ya. Tapi saya pikir pemerintah tidak sependek itulah.
Iya.
Bahwa kita kan sebenarnya ingin menunjukkan solidaritas kemanusiaan ya. Karena memang Indonesia kan dikelilingi oleh juga negara-negara tetangga kita yang juga kadang-kadang ada sengketa, konflik, bencana alam gitu kan. Yang mungkin sewaktu-waktu memang kita butuh tempat untuk mengevakuasi, memberikan tempat untuk mereka mengungsi gitu ya. Kayak kemarin tuh kan konflik ya di antara negara anggota ASEAN, belum lagi bencana alam juga. Jadi saya pikir ya ini wacana ini perlu kita pelajari lebih lanjut lah gitu ya.
Tapi ngomongin pidato Pak Prabowo tadi, gimana sih pengaruh Indonesia untuk negara-negara Islam di PBB tadi untuk mengajak kemerdekaan Palestina? Sekuat apa posisi Indonesia di negara-negara Islam atau di kita ada OKI ya?
Iya. Ya, saya pikir ini adalah sesuatu yang menjadi perhatian publik internasional karena Indonesia itu kan negara dengan populasi 280 juta ya, lebih mungkin sekarang.
285.
Dan majority adalah Muslim gitu. Dan kita bukan negara Arab yang identik juga dengan Islam. Kita adalah negara Asia yang majority Muslim, sehingga Indonesia dalam konteks negara-negara Islam, kita tentunya punya positioning yang tidak bisa diabaikan dalam hal ini gitu. Makanya ketika kita masuk dalam BRICS gitu ya, masuk dalam soal isu Israel Palestina ini, negara-negara lain juga menjadi followers juga kan gitu. Menjadi mengikuti juga apa yang menjadi ritme ini. Begitu Presiden Prabowo bicara soal Palestina, Perdana Menteri Malaysia Mahathir juga bikin semacam panggung juga kan untuk menunjukkan bahwa Malaysia juga punya perhatian terhadap isu-isu Israel Palestina. Nah, artinya bahwa Indonesia dalam hal ini itu negara yang memiliki pengaruh secara geopolitik dalam konteks Islam lah gitu ya.
Tapi kembali lagi bilang negara non-blok, Indonesia seharusnya memang punya posisi sebagai fasilitator kalau misalnya konflik, gitu kan. Melihat perkembangan geopolitik sekarang, apakah Indonesia masih relevan kalau misalkan memang ditunjuk sebagai fasilitator untuk perdamaian Israel dan Palestina?
Ya, ini menjadi pertanyaan kita semua ya. Ketika kita bicara soal Israel Palestina ya, Indonesia mengirimkan bantuan beberapa kali kan ke Palestina. Bahkan Presiden sudah menyatakan siap mengirim pasukan perdamaian ya. Ya, dalam konteks ini kita sebenarnya punya potensi untuk menjadi fasilitator, karena kita tidak pernah menunjukkan diri kita terjebak pada suatu isu gitu kan. Kita mencoba tadi meluruskan, menegakkan prinsip politik luar negeri kita yang bebas aktif gitu. Bahwa kita memang sejak awal diberikan amanah oleh founding fathers kita bahwa kita harus independen dan aktif gitu. Jadi sebenarnya kita punya potensi itu. Bahkan tokoh-tokoh seperti Pak Yusuf Kala ya, itu juga kan
aktif juga ya.
Aktif juga dalam, dengan mungkin beliau palang merah internasionalnya gitu kan, juga aktif. Presiden SBY juga begitu, juga aktif dalam organisasi internasional. Jadi sebenarnya kita punya potensi untuk itu. Tinggal bagaimana Presiden, nah ini juga menurut saya ini perlu kita garis bawahi bahwa Presiden Prabowo secara personal beliau itu sangat menguasai soal substansi politik luar negeri kita. Nah, tapi jangan salah bahwa sebaiknya beliau juga membuka akses yang sangat luas bagi keterlibatan masyarakat sipil. Nah, maksudnya gini, contoh kecil. Ketika beliau sejak dilantik jadi presiden kan aktif sekali kunjungan ke luar negeri.
Ya.
Sambutannya pun meriah.
Meriah sekali kita. Nah, tapi sayang menurut saya ketika kunjungan-kunjungan beliau ini tidak kita kombinasikan dengan kepentingan masyarakat kita gitu. Artinya misalnya pelaku usaha, apa nih ke negara sana apa yang mau kita capai? Apa yang perdagangan yang mau kita raih gitu.
Sekalian studi banding
gitu.
Oleh-olehnya apa gitu.
Iya, artinya bahwa sekali mendayung dua tiga bulan terlewati. Ketika Presiden Prabowo ke sana tuh ini kita targetkan misalnya soal kerjasama pendidikan, beasiswa dengan Australia, dengan Eropa ditingkatkan gitu ya. Artinya bahwa tidak sekedar hanya simbolik kunjungan diplomasinya, tapi memang ada capaian. Nah, untuk itu maka Presiden Prabowo dengan timnya harus membuka ruang dialog, misalkan dengan masyarakat sipil dalam hal ini industri pers, broadcasting, apa kerjasama internasional mau dicapai dengan negara X misalkan, atau misalkan dengan LSM, undang aja mereka gitu kan. Kita punya agenda mau ke negara ini nih, apa nih yang mau kita capai gitu kan. Termasuk juga dalam dunia usaha kan UMKM sekarang juga mereka berharap bisa expand ke luar negeri gitu kan. Nah, gimana caranya? Mungkin kita undang Kemlu ya dalam hal ini, meskipun kita tahu Menlu-nya juga kan orangnya Pak Prabowo gitu.
Anak-anak
iya, tapi ya tidak berarti bahwa dengan demikian Pak Menlu tidak membuka akses yang luas terhadap partisipasi, termasuk ya para jurnalis ini kan mereka bisa memberikan masukan gitu.
Kita ada update bahwa Presiden Prabowo sudah hadir di sana, tapi kita masih menunggu sambil ngobrol. Iya, ditemani oleh sang putra di Hendro Prasetyo. Jadi nanti kita bahas lebih lanjut lagi soal pidato sebelumnya, soal yang tadi nih Mas, yang to state solution, yang bilang bahwa Indonesia bakal mengakui Israel kalau Israel mengakui Palestina. Tapi kalau misalkan kita lihat sampai ke grassroots lah, gitu, banyak yang masih di kitanya sendiri masih ogah untuk mengakui Israel gitu loh. Itu sempat jadi kontroversi juga kan di media sosial, di masyarakat, di pergunjingan segala macam gitu kan.
Iya, betul.
Tanggapan Mas Andi sendiri kayak gimana?
Iya. Ini memang seperti kita menantang diri sendiri ya. Presiden sudah mengatakan bahwa kalau Israel mengakui Palestina, maka Indonesia juga mengakui juga gitu ya. Ya memang ini tantangan buat kita ya. Tapi kapan lagi kita mengharapkan perdamaian di Palestina ya? Kalau kita terus-menerus ya hanya menutup ya mata kita dengan tidak melihatnya secara komprehensif masalah ini gitu kan, bahwa Palestina membutuhkan sebuah wilayah negara berdaulat, tapi pada saat yang sama di situ ada Israel yang juga ingin diakui sebagai negara berdaulat. Mereka punya bertahan dengan tempat pemukiman mereka gitu kan. Jadi memang teman-teman Gen Z ini ya, para pengamat sosial media ini, kita perlu berpikir bijak ya, bahwa perdamaian itu tidak selalu dalam konteks zero sum game. Artinya
bukan menang dan kalah.
Bukan menang dan kalah ya. Kita perlu win-win solution lah ya, positive sum game. Jadi bahwa Prabowo berpikir itu kan sudah kuncinya. Kalau Israel mengakui, ya udah, berarti kan Palestina merdeka, dan berarti harapan kita semua patut disyukuri bahwa Palestina merdeka.
Yang terpenting masyarakat di Palestina sendiri bisa kembali ke tanah mereka, tidak kelaparan.
Dia punya perwakilan diplomatik negara-negara lain diakui gitu kan.
Seperti itu.
Tapi silakan. Ini aku penasaran sih Bang. Saya penasaran. Saya dari tadi. Itu kan berani banget ya Presiden Prabowo Subianto menggaungkan yang seperti itu. Kalau mengakui, baru Indonesia juga mengakui hal seperti itu. Nah, sebenarnya posisi Indonesia dan Israel itu hubungannya seperti apa sih Bang?
Iya, kalau dikatakan hubungan diplomatik, kita tidak punya hubungan diplomatik dengan Israel ya. Meskipun kalau teman-teman lihat statistik perdagangan, mungkin kita punya hubungan perdagangan dengan Israel, tapi tidak dalam hubungan politik dan diplomasi gitu ya. Nah, kemudian kalau kita lihat dalam konteks Palestina, justru kita punya kedutaan Palestina di sini, di Jakarta sini. Artinya bahwa kita secara diplomatik punya hubungan dekat dengan Palestina.
Kalau tidak punya hubungan diplomatik, berarti kan kita tidak boleh mengibarkan bendera Israel dan tidak boleh menyanyikan lagu kebangsaannya. Kan? Itulah kenapa Piala Dunia umur 20 digagalkan.
Gitu kan, gara-gara itu.
Gara-gara itu kan.
Iya, betul.
Terus ini yang saya penasaran dan bikin gedek sebenarnya di media sosial, soal veto.
Iya.
Kita kan ada sekitar 120 negara katanya yang sudah siap untuk mendukung kemerdekaan Palestina, tapi ada 8 negara dan salah satunya adalah gitu kan, tiba-tiba mengeluarkan veto. Ini kalau bahasa-bahasa anak gaul sekarang, ini kayaknya Amerika hobi banget spam veto nih, gitu kan. Spam veto ketika isu-isu Palestina mengemuka. Kalau dalam aturan sendiri, veto itu ada batasannya nggak sih? Gitu?
Ya itulah ya, yang saya katakan bahwa kita perlu mendorong reformasi di PBB. Veto ini mengunci sekali. Ya artinya kalau satu negara aja memveto, itu udah tidak bisa dicapai itu sebuah kesepakatan atau nggak bisa dijalankan. Makanya ini menarik sebenarnya. Benjamin Netanyahu kan Amerika Serikat sudah mengeluarkan larangan, visanya nggak boleh tuh dikasih ke Mahmud Abbas yang presiden otoritas Palestina ya. Jadi Mahmud Abbas menyampaikan secara virtual di sidang PBB karena nggak dikasih visanya oleh Amerika Serikat. Tapi pada saat yang sama Benjamin Netanyahu ketemu sama Trump nih. Jadi Benjamin Netanyahu mengatakan bahwa sikap Israel akan disampaikan setelah nanti ketemu Trump. Nah ini menarik, kita juga menunggu-nunggu apa yang disampaikan oleh Benjamin Netanyahu setelah ketemu Trump. Apakah Trump melunak ya dengan udahlah kita berdamai aja
daripada dikeroyok 120 negara gitu kan.
Karena bisa berkepanjangan itu urusannya nanti.
Tapi Bang, kalau kita lihat juga menyambung tadi dari Mas Kafit, Trump ini terbilang apa ya, sering memainkan kartunya.
Iya, dia tuh bercita-cita mau jadi peraih Nobel perdamaian. Jadi sepertinya beliau itu punya impian menjadi dipajang gitu ya sebagai presiden dengan peraih Nobel perdamaian. Makanya kan aktif sekali, dan beliau menyampaikan bahwa dalam 24 jam setelah saya dilantik atau saya resmi menjadi presiden, saya akan menyelesaikan urusan Israel Palestina. Ternyata
yang keluar Trump tarif.
Iya, ternyata enggak juga gitu kan. Aduh.
Iya, di luar prediksi kita,
di luar
ya.
prediksi, di luar mungkin Presiden Trump menganggap inilah sesuatu yang mudah lah diselesaikan. Ternyata kompleks sekali urusannya gitu.
Terus ini nih Mas, yang menarik tadi sempat jadi isu soal nikmati.
Iya.
Itu kan sebenarnya teknis ya, tapi kan memang ahli-ahli kontroversi, konspirasi di media sosial tuh udah banyak bertebaran gitu kan.
Iya, benar.
Tapi diluruskan ya, matinya mic itu kayak gimana Mas? Yang Mas Andi tahu?
Ya, ini saya nggak tahu teknis di dalam ya, tapi mungkin barangkali masing-masing, karena ini kan sidang internasional itu sangat strict soal timing, ya soal timing, dan tidak hanya di PBB, mungkin di banyak sidang-sidang internasional juga memang strict soal timing, karena mereka kan harus punya rundown spesifik ya, sehingga ketika seseorang menyampaikan dengan porsi dan waktunya harus disiplin juga dengan waktu ya. Saya tidak tahu apakah yang disampaikan oleh Presiden Prabowo melewati dari batas waktu yang diberikan ya. Tapi ini pelajaran ya, bahwa kalau memang betul itu ada timing, maka Presiden mungkin perlu exercise, perlu exercise atau rehearsals ya, untuk melihat bagaimana speech beliau itu sesuai dengan timing yang telah ditentukan gitu kan. Karena dan ini nggak cuma Presiden Prabowo, semualah buat pelajaran pejabat-pejabat publik di kita ya. Persoalan pernyataan publik itu kan perlu latihan ternyata, jangan sampai kepleset soal kata-kata yang kurang mengena di masyarakat gitu kan gitu.
Blunder lah gitu.
Iya blunder lah.
Sampai ada yang plesetin Bang, ini bercandaan doang sih di Twitter kayak ya udah kayak di Senayan dimatiin mic-nya, bercandain.
Iya.
Ini kita sebenarnya sidang udah mulai, tapi kita kayak masih menunggu gilirannya Pak Prabowo untuk ini. Nah, sebelum maju nih, sebelum Prabowo maju, apa yang paling Mas Andi harapkan keluar dari mulut seorang Presiden Prabowo Subianto?
Iya. Pertama, kita perlu menyampaikan secara tegas ya bahwa keadilan, kesetaraan, dan juga inklusivitas itu perlu menjadi prioritas dalam organisasi, dalam kerjasama multilateral ya. Nah ini tentunya relevan dengan fenomena yang kita saksikan, tindakan-tindakan unilateral dari Amerika Serikat, itu kan sedikit banyak mendegradasi posisi PBB sendiri gitu. PBB yang tadi diharapkan bisa membantu menjaga ketertiban dunia, justru dengan posisi Amerika Serikat sebagai pemegang veto, ya bertolak belakang dengan apa yang dilakukan oleh Presiden Trump. Nah, ketegasan kita dalam menyampaikan pidato ini, saya pikir ini menjadi stimulan, menjadi kekuatan untuk sama-sama memiliki visi yang sama untuk mengembalikan eksistensi juga dan pengaruh PBB dalam konteks multilateralisme ya. Nah, kedua, kita mengharapkan bahwa Indonesia dengan melalui sidang PBB ini ingin menunjukkan kepada dunia bahwa Indonesia juga memiliki potensi ya. Jadi selain kita mengurusi urusan luar, kita juga ingin mendeklar soal situasi di dalam negeri kita kan gitu. bahwa dengan demokratisasi yang berjalan, kita punya potensi ekonomi yang besar ya, terutama juga soal isu lingkungan ya, kita sekarang mendorong, iya gitu. Betul, kita mendorong transisi energi, kemudian sudah kita membuka investasi hijau di Indonesia. Artinya Indonesia dalam hal ini tidak ingin ketinggalan momentum transisi energi dunia, transisi pembangunan berkelanjutan gitu kan. Jadi dengan begitu Prabowo memperkuat citra kita sebagai negara yang nggak cuma identik soal batu bara ya, tapi kita juga concern soal isu-isu global, kayak terutama soal pembangunan berkelanjutan gitu, Mas Hafid.
Seberapa berpengaruhnya pidato Presiden Prabowo Subianto menyinggung soal Palestina ini dengan citra kita yang tentunya kita lihat track recordnya Indonesia juga kan baru menghadapi kayak demo kemarin, semua dunia juga tahu, kemudian dia menyampaikan hal ini, seberapa pengaruh Bang?
Iya, kalau kita mengukur pengaruh secara kuantitatif memang agak sulit ya, tapi setidaknya ketika Pak Presiden memanfaatkan forum ini adalah kesempatan besar untuk bicara di depan ratusan negara yang kita punya potensi untuk meningkatkan hubungan itu gitu. Jadi sebenarnya kalau kita katakan pengaruhnya, tentunya setelah ini pasti ada komunikasi lagi kan. Jadi untuk melihat pengaruhnya, justru yang kita perlu lakukan adalah tindak lanjut setelah sidang ini. Bagaimana para diplomat kita di Amerika Serikat, juga diplomat Kemlu kita, itu perlu menindaklanjuti apa yang telah disampaikan oleh Pak Presiden ini gitu. Sehingga tadi pengaruh tadi betul-betul kita rasakan nanti setelah sidang umum PBB ini kan gitu. Karena tadi diplomasi tadi kan tidak hanya soal pernyataan Presiden, tapi juga bagaimana kemampuan kita untuk melakukan lobbying, melakukan pendekatan kan. Nah yang penting justru sebenarnya tidak hanya soal pidatonya, tapi bagaimana pasca pernyataan Presiden ini Indonesia memainkan perannya gitu, Mbak Ersa.
Ya tadi berarti perlukah Prabowo mengusung lagi soal reformasi PBB seperti yang Ibu Mega kemarin bilang bahwa kita deadlock nih kalau misalkan veto terus gitu kan, atau kita deadlock nih kalau misalkan kita udah menang jumlah 120 lawan 8, kalau secara hitung-hitungan sistem demokrasi ya harusnya ya memang yang mayoritas yang menang. Betul. Tapi kok masih ada veto gitu kan. Reformasi seperti apa yang harus dilakukan PBB?
Ya, ini pertanyaan yang sangat serius ya Mas Afif.
Sudah begini
agak berat menjawabnya ini ya. Ya, ini perlu kita mungkin melihatnya secara sederhana. Pertama, Presiden Amerika Serikat sudah menyatakan menurunkan atau mengurangi donasi dia ke PBB. Nah, padahal kalau kita bicara organisasi itu kan bergantung juga kepada pendanaan. Nah, artinya ketika dana dikurangi, wah program-program tuh pada kena dampak semua kan gitu ya. Nah, kedua, Amerika Serikat sebagai salah satu penyandang dana utama, dia juga sudah menarik diri tuh dari WHO, dari UNESCO ya, dari juga SDGs juga ya, menolak SDGs. Nah ini sebenarnya menjadi momentum untuk reformasi PBB sendiri gitu ya. Reformasi PBB misalkan bahwa tadi hak veto 5 negara itu apa masih relevan dalam konteks sekarang? Nah, itu perlu kita diskusikan lebih lanjut. Karena bayangkan ada ratusan negara di dunia ini hanya diselesaikan oleh 5 negara gitu kan.
Yang lain
yang lain
penyedap aja.
Iya, yang lain hanya pengamat atau mungkin penggembira aja gitu loh.
Jadi kayak acar kita.
Iya, benar gitu. Dan 5 negara itu pun tidak semua merepresentasikan dari jumlah negara-negara yang ada. Misalkan negara berkembang kan lebih banyak jumlahnya daripada negara maju gitu loh. Nah, apakah proporsional dengan P5 itu 5 negara yang punya hak veto itu? Nah, saya pikir ini perlu kita kritisi dan upayakan untuk direform ya. Kalau bisa Dewan Keamanan PBB tadi ya jangan 5 lah, ya proporsional aja. Misal masing-masing negara mewakili wilayahnya Asia Tenggara ada perwakilannya, Asia Barat, Timur Tengah ada perwakilannya gitu kan, sehingga
ASEAN ada sendiri.
Ada sendiri. Karena gini, bagaimana mereka bisa merasakan masalah di tempat mereka kalau mereka bukan penduduk asli atau barangkali orang di situ, negara dari asli situ kan, wilayah situ, gitu kan? Sama seperti misalnya anggota dewan. Bagaimana beliau atau anggota dewan bisa merasakan masalah di negara, di wilayah atau daerahnya kalau dia bukan mungkin orang asli situ? Seperti yang kita saksikan, misalnya ada beberapa anggota dewan kita yang bukan dapilnya, bukan orang asli dapil, tapi mungkin bicara wilayah yang jadi dapilnya gitu. Belum tentu juga fasih kan gitu bicara, karena memang bukan lahir besar di situ juga atau bukan orang asli situ gitu.
Dapilnya Kalimantan ngomongnya Jakarta
gitu kan. Nah ini jadi
sama kayak gini berarti ya.
Tapi mungkin udah survei dulu kali,
survei dulu,
udah
bisa
udah
juga
kesana dulu kali ya.
Betul.
Iya.
Gitu.
Dan bentar lagi kita akan lihat ya bersama David.
Kalau dari informasi dari istana sendiri, ada Peter Zelensky ya ini ya.
Ukraine. Karena
ngomongin Ukraine sendiri, Pak Prabowo sendiri dalam waktu ketika menjadi Menhan pernah menawarkan solusi demilitarisasi ya soal Ukraina dan Rusia. Itu sebenarnya langkah yang bukan lumayan ya, sangat bagus sih, karena memang udah pernah dilakukan kayak di Korea Utara dan Korea Selatan, di Libya dan Libya Utara, dan berhasil meredam konflik dari dua negara tetangga yang saling ribut gitu loh, ya kan. Korea Utara sama Korea Selatan ada demilitarisasi, ada wilayah yang tidak boleh dimasuki oleh militer. Itu bagus. Apakah solusinya dari Pak Prabowo untuk Palestina dan Israel yang two state solution itu akan sebagus demilitarisasi itu? Atau gimana?
Iya, sebenarnya two state solution ini bukan baru-baru ini ya. Kita sering banget dengar dulu waktu zamannya Ibu Menlu Retno, zaman Pak Jokowi itu kan sudah berapa kali beliau menyampaikan soal two state solution, Indonesia dalam posisi kedaulatan Palestina, kita mendorong ada. Jadi sebenarnya udah lama juga solusi ini. Cuman perbedaannya adalah hari ini itu negara-negara barat yang selama ini nggak setuju dengan ide ini, mereka menyampaikan rekognisinya gitu terhadap Palestina. Karena selama ini two state solution itu hanya beberapa negara aja, termasuk kita kan yang sepertinya mengkampanyekan ini. Tapi sekarang ini momentumnya ternyata Prancis, kemudian Inggris gitu kan.
Momentumnya ada ya. Kita lihat juga banyak unjuk rasa pro Palestina yang dilakukan oleh negara-negara yang bisa dalam berkutip mayoritasnya non muslim gitu. Karena selama ini kan banyak yang bilang bahwa ya ini kan konflik agama, padahal bukan kan, ini konflik kemanusiaan. Pak Prabowo sendiri bilangnya ini humanity catastrophe gitu kan, bencana kemanusiaan gitu. Ini kita dapat informasi dari istana bahwa Pak Prabowo bakal membacakan pidato di urutan ketiga.
Urutan ketiga.
Ini yang pertama.
Pertama ya.
Satu presiden 15 menit. Jadi kita masih punya waktu sekitar setengah jam lagi.
Iya, benar.
Jadi kita masih banyak sembari menunggu ya, Bang. Jadi kita masih diskusi-diskusi soal bagaimana nanti pidato yang sudah disampaikan oleh Presiden Prabowo tadi. Tadi Abang sudah sampaikan dari bagaimana pengaruhnya dan seperti itu. Nah, Bang, sembari kita menunggu, ini saya kepo lagi ya sebenarnya. Tadi sebenarnya di awal Abang udah sebut kalau Presiden Prabowo ini sangat aktif, masif sekali menjalin hubungan ke luar negeri, tapi kurang melibatkan masyarakat sipil tadi. Tapi kalau kita lihat, Bang, dalam pertemuan dengan pemimpin negara, bukankah Presiden Prabowo Subianto ini kerap bilang, saya bawa oleh-olehnya melakukan perjanjian bilateral, ekonomi semakin meningkat dan segala macam.
Bawa oleh-oleh investasi.
Itu bukankah jawaban?
Iya, tapi pertanyaannya kemudian bagaimana indikator real yang kita ingin lihat kan gitu. Karena kalau bicara perjanjian kan semua di atas kertas. Gitu kan. Yang kita ingin lihat bagaimana realnya gitu kan. Yang sekarang Pak Presiden sudah punya ide Danantara. Saya pikir ini bagus nih Danantara, karena bicara soal Danantara tuh kita teringat satu konsep yang kita sebut sebagai sovereign wealth fund atau dana kedaulatan ya, dana negara ya, sovereign wealth fund ini. Dan ini sudah dibuktikan tidak hanya oleh negara maju seperti Norway. Norway itu punya sovereign wealth fund yang besar nilainya dan dia sudah berinvestasi di berbagai negara. Juga dibuktikan oleh Saudi. Arab Saudi punya namanya Public Investment Fund. Itu makanya dia membiayai event-event internasional olahraga itu melalui Public Investment Fund tadi. Nah, dan antara sepertinya kepengen juga kita pengen kayak gitu loh. Seperti Temasek Singapura gitu kan.
Temasek Singapura ya betul.
Nah, pertanyaannya adalah sejauh mana dan antara melibatkan pengusaha-pengusaha lainnya gitu kan. Karena Indonesia itu 280 juta Pak, lebih penduduknya gitu. Pengusahanya juga banyak kan. Nah, apakah Danantara tadi bisa merangkul tadi ya, setidaknya mungkin mewakili lah daerah-daerah, kelompok-kelompok asosiasi-asosiasi UMKM. Jadi kalau bicara perjanjian, oke lah, misal perjanjian tercapai. Tapi bagaimana implementasinya? Karena tadi kan kita demokrasi kan. Nah, demokrasi tadi harus melibatkan atau setidaknya mengakomodasi kepentingan sipil yang luas gitu kan. Yang luas. Jadi meskipun Pak Menlunya orangnya beliau ya, kadernya Pak Presiden Prabowo, tapi tetap bahwa Kemlu dalam hal ini, ini juga menjadi menarik menurut saya nih, ketika bicara soal kebijakan luar negeri ya. Kita belum melihat suatu kolaborasi ya, suatu kerjasama. Misalnya gini, kalau kita bicara soal kebijakan ekonomi itu terkait dengan perdagangan, itu kementerian mana aja yang harus ikut terlibat gitu. Nah, karena kita masih melihat justru ego sektoral. Jadi kementerian ini bikin pameran internasional di sana. Kementerian Perdagangan ikut event expo di sana. Padahal itu dana negara loh.
Iya.
Ya kan?
Iya.
Nah,
jadi seperti jalan di sendiri-sendiri.
Sendiri-sendiri. Padahal kalau kita gabungkan, kita punya efisiensi anggaran. Dan itu semakin memperkuat ini kalau kita bersatu kan semakin kuat tuh. Pola kita pamerannya, promosi seperti apa, dan anggaran itu bisa kita maksimalkan, alokasikan untuk yang lain lagi gitu kan. Nah, untuk itu kita perlu leading ministry, kementerian yang leading. Kalau bicara kebijakan luar negeri, kenapa enggak Kemlu lah dalam hal ini menjadi koordinatornya. Kalau urusan perdagangan ekspor segala macam, kumpulin tuh semua menteri-menteri atau dirjen-dirjen yang mau bicara soal ekspor, soal investasi internasional. Ayo kita punya satu visi yang sama. Kita mau target ini, oke apa kendalanya gitu, apa masalahnya gitu kan. Nah, sehingga nanti anggarannya juga bisa efisien.
Jadi seperti tertata ya, terkonsep.
Iya, terorganisir. Apalagi kita tahu kan Pak Presiden kan jenderal Pak.
Iya.
Jenderal kan harusnya
punya aura yang lainnya.
Instruksi aja. Langsung, gitu kan.
Tinggal perintah.
Iya gitu.
Gimana sih Abang melihat ini kita ngomongin jadi kebijakan tadi Abang bilang soal luar negeri kan, gimana sih? Ini udah banyak banget yang kita obrolin ya.
Kayaknya kita mau bikin buku nih Pak.
Kalau melihat era kepemimpinan Presiden Prabowo Subianto dengan dengan Bapak Sugiono sebagai Menlu, gimana Abang melihat jalin komunikasi ke seluruh negara-negara?
Saya pikir kalau bicara soal komunikasi ini beliau jagonya lah gitu ya. Karena Pak Presiden itu kan perwira ya, kemudian juga lulusan Akmil. Akmil itu lulusannya bahasa Inggrisnya bagus-bagus lah ya, keren-keren lah ya. Artinya soal komunikasi internasional saya pikir bukan suatu kendala buat beliau.
Nggak diragukan lagi ya Bang?
Nggak diragukan lagi. Dan waktu beliau pada masa Orde Baru pun beliau punya hubungan yang baik kan dengan banyak negara gitu lah, dengan banyak negara. Jadi saya pikir tidak ada hambatan lah soal komunikasi internasional. Tinggal tadi bahwa ini menjadi sebuah leverage ya, sebuah kekuatan gitu kan. Nah, tinggal bagaimana kita mengkapitalisasi kekuatan ini menjadi sebuah yang real gitu ya. Karena kita tuh Indonesia potensi besar. Tapi tantangan kita bagaimana kita bisa merealisasikan potensi itu menjadi bermanfaat buat masyarakat gitu, buat negara kita.
Kita tadi ngomongin panjang lebar soal pidatonya Prabowo soal Palestina dan Israel. Kita balik lagi nih ngomongin soal Indonesia di kancah dunia, terutama di isu soal Palestina dan Israel. kita itu kan sebenarnya bisa dibilang Indonesia itu kawah candra di muka.
Iya.
Semua hal heterogenisme itu ada di sini semua. Kita banyak suku, kita banyak bahasa, kita terbiasa untuk menyatukan hal-hal yang berbeda menjadi satu. Apakah itu bisa ditularkan ke Palestina dan Israel dengan pengalaman kita dari zaman Majapahit malah
Iya, betul.
bahwa kita ada Sumpah Palapa yang akan menyatukan Nusantara segala macam, lalu sampai sekarang Sumpah Pemuda, lalu kemerdekaan. Bisakah itu ditularkan ke Palestina dan Israel sebenarnya?
Ya, ini kita bicara semangat optimisme ya, optimis ya, bahwa Indonesia itu menjadi contoh bagaimana keberagaman itu hidup di antara kita, di antara bangsa kita, rakyat dan masyarakat kita. Bahkan kalau kita bicara jumlah suku, jumlah bahasa, kita mungkin nggak habis pikir. Ternyata kita bisa mendeklar kita sebagai Indonesia, gitu kan. Nah, berarti ini adalah suatu keberkahan buat kita sebagai bangsa. Kita bisa bersatu dalam satu payung yang kita sebut sebagai bangsa Indonesia, dan ini perlu kita rawat. Nah, merawat inilah generasi Gen Z inilah ya. Artinya termasuk anak-anak muda kita yang menyaksikan acara kita pada malam hari ini, kita perlu menanamkan tadi bahwa para perintis pembangunan bangsa ini sudah mewariskan kepada kita semua warisan budaya yang sangat beragam, ya, warisan etnis yang sangat beragam. Nah, ini juga menjadi kekuatan sosial kita di mata internasional, gitu. Makanya kemarin ketika insiden waktu Agustus kelam ya, akhir Agustus kemarin itu kan semua hampir sebagian besar media mainstream internasional itu mempublish gitu berita ini, karena yang mereka pahami Indonesia adalah negara demokrasi yang besar, Indonesia negara dengan beragam kultur, tapi kok terjadi chaos.
Biasanya adem gitu ya.
Anarkisme gitu kan.
Nah, kalau kita misalnya ngelihat dari, kalau kita ingat pemaparannya Profesor Bagus Mulyadi sendiri di Belgia, itu bahasanya cuma 4. Mereka cuma ada 4, tapi sampai sekarang mereka belum memutuskan bahasa resmi negaranya. 4 loh ya. Kita ada sekitar ribuan bahasa. Ada ribuan bahasa di Indonesia, dan kita berhasil menyatukan bahwa bahasa kita adalah bahasa Indonesia. Makanya berkaca di negara lain yang sukunya mungkin nggak terlalu banyak, tapi mereka sulit untuk mencapai kesepakatan. Nah, di Indonesia itu rahasianya apa? Kita ada 17.000 pulau, 400 suku gitu kan, 7.000 bahasa gitu kan, banyak banget gitu kan. Heterogenisme bahasanya gitu.
Perbedaan-perbedaannya ya.
Multikulturalisme ya. Saya pikir rahasia ini merupakan pertanyaan kita semua. Jadi saya pikir ini kembali kepada personality orang Indonesia. Personality kita yang mau menerima orang lain ya, mau merangkul, punya hubungan sosial yang baik, karena tadi saya pikir ini juga bagian dari proses pembelajaran kan. Kita dari kecil ya ada pelajaran-pelajaran yang untuk memahami tentang situasi sosial budaya di masyarakat kita, itu juga bagian. Jadi sebenarnya di dalam keilmuan ya, sosialisasi itu juga bisa dilakukan melalui pendidikan sebenarnya. Jadi kita memang dididik dari kecil kan, soal tadi bagaimana kita menghormati orang lain, juga mengakui adat istiadat orang lain. Jadi sebenarnya ini bagian dari proses pembelajaran ya, bangsa ini, dari mulai baik itu dari sekolah formal maupun institusi pendidikan non formal. Ya, bahkan di keluarga juga masing-masing kan juga orang tua mengajari itu kan, kita bertoleransi kepada tetangga, menghormati.
Sebenarnya dari tingkat keluarga dan tingkat tetangga sendiri kita udah diajarin untuk istilahnya gotong royong.
Betul.
Dari kecil kita udah diajarin itu gitu kan. Dan sebenarnya banyak juga ormas-ormas Islam yang dari NU Muhammadiyah itu mendorong luar negeri.
Betul.
Ini loh contoh loh, ada loh negara yang sukunya bejibun banyak banget gitu
Betul.
kan. Perbedaannya kayak nggak kehitung gitu
Betul.
kan. Kita ke Bali aja kita nggak ngerti bahasa Bali itu orang bersederakan apa gitu kan.
Betul.
Tapi kita bisa bersatu gitu.
Nah, betul. Nah, tinggal masalahnya gini. Kemarin tuh kita baru menghadiri sebuah diskusi ya yang berbicara tentang fokus kerjasama dengan Arab Saudi ya misalnya. Nah, karena kita tuh kaya budaya, kaya adat istiadat dan keberagaman ya, warisan budaya. Tapi ternyata tidak semua negara tahu soal itu. Padahal kalau kita bicara soal potensi ekonomi, itu kan menjadi potensi ekonomi, Pak. Ya kan, orang kita bisa menjual industri kreatif kita gitu kan. Nah, sepanjang yang didiskusikan itu bahwa orang luar negeri itu lebih banyak tahu hanya Bali dan beberapa wilayah aja gitu.
Lombok
gitu ya.
Gitu aja ya.
Padahal kan ada Kalimantan yang juga eksotik gitu kan.
Segede gaban itu gede banget.
Sulawesi gitu. Nah, artinya bahwa kekayaan ini perlu kita promosikan. Makanya tadi saya bilang bahwa Pak Prabowo harus menggandeng semua elemen di dalam negeri ini untuk sama-sama mempromosikan potensi kita. Nah, ya termasuk tadi mungkin menggandeng industri penyiaran ya kan, ikut promosi-promosi budaya dan juga kekayaan alam, pariwisata gitu kan.
Baik,
Udah mau pidato ya?
iya, Bang Andi kayaknya sepertinya belum ke Presiden Prabowo Subianto, tapi kita mengingatkan juga kepada Okezoners dan juga Mas Kafid bahwa Indonesia nanti pas Presiden Prabowo Subianto ini nanti di urutan ketiga. Jadi yang pertama nanti ada Presiden dari Brazil dulu, kemudian nanti dari Amerika Serikat, baru ke Indonesia. Tapi ini sebelumnya kita saksikan sama-sama karena langsung ada juga penyampaian langsung dari pidato Sekjen PBB yakni Antonio Guterres yang sedang berlangsung.
And how its parts work together. Most of these decisions rest with you, the Member States, and we will move forward in full respect of the established procedures. Together, let us choose to invest in a United Nations that adapts, innovates, and is empowered to deliver for people everywhere. Excellencies, my overriding message comes down to this. Now is the time to choose. It's not enough to know what the right choices are. I urge you to make them. I grew up in a world where choices were few. I was raised in the darkness of dictatorship, where fear silenced voices and hope was nearly crushed. Yet, even the bleakest hours, especially then, I discovered a truth that has never left me. Power does not reside in the hands of those who dominate or divide. Real power resides from people, from our shared resolve to uphold dignity, to defend equality, to believe fiercely in our common humanity and the potential of every human being. I learned early to persevere, to speak out, to refuse to surrender, no matter the challenge, no matter the obstacle, no matter the hour. We must and we will overcome. Because in a world of many choices, there is one choice we must never make, the choice to give up. We must never give up. That is my promise to you, for peace, for dignity, for justice, for humanity, for the world we know is possible when we work as one. I will never, ever give up. Thank you.
I thank the Secretary General. The Assembly will now turn to agenda item 8, entitled General Debate. 80 years, longer than the average human life. This anniversary of the United Nations should have been a moment of celebration. But this is not an ordinary year. Just look at the state of our world, as the Secretary General described. Thousands of orphans in Gaza are wandering around the rubble, eating sand, drinking contaminated water. 90-year-old women in Ukraine are hiding from drones, trapped in their homes instead of living their final years in peace. Children in Haiti, too afraid to walk to school, afraid they might be gunned down by gangs like their friends. And for every conflict and tragedy that seizes the headlines, there are so many more that are forgotten, lost to the news cycle. Like women in Democratic Republic of the Congo, shielding their daughters from armed groups, fearful they might be raped. And Rohingya children spending their whole childhood in tattered tents, unable to remember what their home looks like. Faced with these realities, now is not the time to celebrate, but to ask ourselves, where is the United Nations? Distinguished heads of state and government, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, people out there in the world watching us. Clearly, we have to do better. But what we should not let cynics allow to weaponize these failures, to argue that our institution is a waste of money, outdated, irrelevant. When the principles of the Charter are ignored, is it the UN that has failed? When tanks rolled into Ukraine, was it because Article 2 of the Charter is not clear enough about sovereignty and territorial integrity? When civilians, children, are killed in Gaza, is it humanitarian law at fault for failing to protect them? It's not the Charter which fails. It's not the UN as an institution which fails. The Charter, our Charter, is only as strong as member states' willingness to uphold it, and their willingness to hold to account those who violate it. Excellencies, yes, our world is in pain. Yes, we have failures. But imagine how much worse would it be without the United Nations? Would a single person be better off without it? Without UNICEF, 26 million children would not have received an education. Without the World Food Programme, nearly 125 million people would have lacked life-saving food assistance. Without the World Health Organization, over 1 billion vaccines would not have been supplied. Sometimes we could have done more, but we cannot let this dishearten us. If we stop doing the right thing, evil would prevail. This 80th session is not about big celebrations. It's about finding the resolve not to give up, the resolve to be better together, just as our predecessors did 8 decades ago. This institution was born in a world on fire and desperate for reprieve. 750 million, nearly a third of humanity back then, still under colonial rule. 2 world wars in a generation, 70 million dead, the horrors of the Holocaust revealed to our collective shame. This was a generation that knew almost nothing but suffering and despair. The signing of the Charter in 1945 gave hope to millions, gave us a North Star that guided our path from the ashes of war, helped guide nations from colonial rule into independent states, helped end apartheid. Across the decades, the United Nations has been a compass pointing toward peace, humanity, and justice. We have not always succeeded, but the story of this institution is not a story of easy victories. It's a story of falling and rising, of pulling ourselves and each other back up and trying harder. We gather here for the 80th time, not for empty celebration, not out of ritual, not to hear our own voices. We gather to prove that this institution matters, and that through this institution, every nation represented here, no matter how big or small, can summon again the strength and unity first shown in San Francisco 80 years ago. The courage and resolve of world leaders who, even while some called them back then naive, believed they could build a better world from the wreckage of the old. They showed then what true leadership is. It's not about imposing your will or putting others down. True leadership is about lifting others up, not out of altruism, but for our mutual benefit, and even out of our self-interest. Because as our founders and every architect of peace since then has understood, helping others is what makes ultimately our own countries stronger. Could any state have faced the global pandemic alone? The virus did not have any passport. We were only able to solve it at the end with the support of the World Health Organization. The climate crisis does not stop at borders. CO2 emissions anywhere affect people everywhere. Even the wealthiest cities in the world cannot shield themselves from wildfires. And imagine coming here by plane. How safe would you feel to step into the next airplane if there were no International Civil Aviation Organization anymore, which is responsible for setting safety regulations for 5 billion passengers each year? How comfortable would you be with your children using the internet while AI is uncontrolled and unchecked? As the lines between what is real and fake start to blur. In this globalized, digitalized world, we work together or we suffer alone. Excellencies, the theme of this milestone session and the high-level week is therefore Better Together. 80 years and more for peace, development, and human rights. Will living up to that be easy? No. But this hall was not built for easy times. It was built to come together to confront the hardest topics. This session is a session where the high-level week is about resolving differences. We showed some of it yesterday already. But even the house of dialogue and diplomacy needs a renovation. That is why the UN80 initiative and the wider reform process are not luxuries, but necessities. We are literally now at a crossroads, a make it or break it moment, politically, financially. Therefore, we have to deliver a United Nations that is agile, cost-effective, and fit for purpose. Member states have to give the Secretary General and this process their full support, because reform cannot stop in New York. It must carry through to every capital. That includes delivering the Pact for the Future and accelerating progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. Again, this is not about charity. It's about addressing the core purposes of this institution, about strengthening our foundations across all three pillars: peace and security, human rights, and sustainable development. They are inseparable. Leaving hundreds of millions trapped in extreme poverty, vulnerable to crisis, and denied their human rights is not only a moral failure, it's a recipe for global unrest, terrorism, and a tragic waste of humanity's greatest resource, its people. Put it simply, without the SDGs, there cannot be lasting peace. Excellencies, our future as an institution will also be shaped by the selection of the next Secretary General. And here we must pause and reflect. In nearly 80 years, this organization has never chosen a woman for that role. One might wonder how out of 4 billion potential candidates, there could not be found a single one. Of course, the choice rests with member states. But those of you having been there yesterday celebrating Beijing, one strong female leader after the other from all our continents. Like 80 years ago, we are standing at a crossroads. And it's up to us, to every single member state, to live up to the same leadership as your predecessors did. To act when action is needed. To uphold the principles of our Charter. To be better together. To show the people around the world that this United Nation is there. Today, tomorrow, and for the next 8 decades. Because, after all, it's the life insurance for every country. Before giving the floor to the first speaker for this morning, I would like to remind member states that the list of speakers for the general debate has been established on the agreed basis that statements should be no longer than 15 minutes to enable all the speakers to be heard at a given meeting. Within this time frame, I would like to appeal to speakers to deliver their statements at a reasonable pace so that interpretation into the other official languages may be provided properly. I would also like to draw your attention to the decision taken by the Assembly at previous sessions, namely that the practice of expressing congratulations inside the Assembly Hall after speech has been delivered is strongly discouraged. After delivering their statements from the rostrum, speakers are invited to exit the hall through room JA200, located behind the podium, before returning to their seats. May I take it that the Assembly agrees to proceed in this manner? It's so decided. Finally, I should like to draw the attention of member states that during the general debate, official photographers are in the room and will take official photographs of all speakers by the Department of Global Communications. Members interested in obtaining these photographs are requested to contact the Photo Library of the United Nations. By this, the Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, President of the Federative Republic of Brazil. I request the protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
Senhora Presidente da Assembleia
Madam
Geral,
President of the General Assembly,
Annalena Barbu,
Annalena
Senhor Secretário-Geral,
Mr.
Antônio
Secretary
Guterres,
General Antonio Guterres,
caro chefe de Estado e de governo,
dear heads of state and government,
representante dos
and
Estados
representatives of the member
aqui
states
reunidos.
gathered here.
Este
This
deveria ser um
should
momento de
be a
celebração
time
das
to
Nações
celebrate
Unidas.
the United Nations.
Criada no fim
Created
da guerra,
at the end of the
a
war,
ONU simboliza a
the
expressão
UN
mais
symbolizes the
elevada
highest
da aspiração
expression
pela paz
of the
e
aspiration
pela
for
prosperidade.
peace and prosperity.
Hoje, contudo,
Today, however,
os ideais que
the
inspiraram seus
ideals that
fundadores em São
inspired its
Francisco
founders in San
estão
Francisco
ameaçados
are
como nunca
under
estiveram
threat as
em toda a
never
sua
before
história.
in their history.
O multilateralismo
Multilateralism
está diante de
is
nova
at a new
encruzilhada.
crossroads.
A autoridade desta organização
The organization's
está em
authority
xeque.
is in check.
Assistimos à
We are
consolidação de uma
witnessing the
desordem
consolidation
internacional
of an international
marcada por seguidas
marked by
concessões
repeated
à política
concessions
do poder,
to power play,
atentados à soberania,
attacks on sovereignty,
sanções arbitrárias
arbitrary sanctions,
e intervenções
and
unilaterais
unilateral
estão se
interventions
tornando
are
regra.
becoming the rule.
Existe evidente
There
paralelo
is a clear
entre a
parallel
crise do
between
multilateralismo e do
multilateralism
enfraquecimento
crisis
da
and the weakening
democracia.
of democracy.
O autoritarismo se fortalece
Authoritarianism is
quando nos
strengthened
omitimos
when we
frente à
fail to
arbitrariedade.
act in the face of
Quando a
arbitrary
sociedade
acts.
internacional
When the international society
vacila na defesa da
falters
paz,
in defending
da
peace,
soberania e do
sovereignty,
direito,
and the rule
as
of law,
consequências são
the
trágicas.
consequences are
Em
tragic
todo o mundo,
throughout the world.
forças antidemocráticas
Anti-democratic
tentam
forces are
subjugar
trying to
as
subjugate
instituições e
institutions
sufocar
and
as
stifle
liberdades.
freedoms.
Cultua a violência,
They worship violence,
exalta a
praise
ignorância,
ignorance,
atua como
act
milícias
as physical
físicas e
and
digitais
digital militias,
e cerceiam a
and
imprensa.
restrict the press.
Mesmo sob ataques sem
Even
precedentes,
under an
o Brasil
unprecedented
optou
attack,
por
Brazil
resistir
chose to
e
resist
defender sua
and defend its
democracia
democracy.
reconquistada há
Regained
40 anos
40
pelo seu
years
povo
ago by
depois
its
de
people
2 décadas de
after
governo
2 decades
ditatoriais.
of dictatorial government.
Não há justificativa
There
para
is
as
no
medidas
justification for
unilaterais e
unilateral
arbitrárias
and
contra nossas
arbitrary measures
instituições e nossa
against our
economia.
institutions and our
A
economy.
agressão contra a independência do
The
poder
aggression
judiciário
against the
é
independence of the
inaceitável.
judiciary branch of power
Esta
is
ingerência
unacceptable.
em
This
assuntos
interference
internos
in domestic
conta com o
affairs
auxílio de uma
is
extrema-direita
aided by a
subserviente
subservient
e saudosa
far-right
de antigas
who is
hegemonias.
nostalgic of past
Falsos
hegemonies. False
arquitetam
patriots
e promovem
plan and
publicamente
publicly promote
ações contra o
actions
Brasil.
against Brazil.
Não há pacificação com
Cannot
impunidade.
be achieved with
Há poucos
impunity.
dias,
A few days
e
ago,
pela primeira
and for the
vez em
first time in
525 anos de nossa
525
história,
years of our
um
history,
ex-chefe de
a
Estado
former head of state
foi condenado
was
por atentar
convicted
contra
of
o Estado
attacking the
democrático de
democratic
direito.
rule of law.
Foi
He
investigado,
was investigated,
indiciado e julgado
indicted, trialed,
e
and held
responsabilizado pelos
accountable
seus atos
for his
em
actions
processo
in a
minucioso.
meticulous process.
Teve amplo direito de defesa,
He has the right
prerrogativas
to
que as
defend himself was
ditaduras
secured,
negam
a
às suas
prerogative that
vítimas.
dictatorships deny to
Diante
their
dos olhos
victims
do mundo,
before the eyes of the
O Brasil
world.
deu um recado a
Brazil
todos os
sent a
candidatos
message to all
autocratas
aspiring
e aqueles que os apoiam.
autocrats and those who
Nossa
support them.
democracia
Our
e
democracy,
nossa soberania
our sovereignty
são
are
inegociáveis.
non-negotiable.
Seguiremos como
We will
nação
continue
independente
as an
e como
independent
povo
nation
livre
and as
de
a people
qualquer tipo de
free
tutela.
from any type of guardianship.
Democracias sólidas
Sound
vão além
democracies
do
go
ritual eleitoral.
beyond the electoral ritual.
Seu vigor
Its strength
pressupõe a redução das
presupposes the
desigualdades,
reduction of
a garantia
inequalities,
dos direitos
the
mais
guarantee of the
elementares,
most basic
a
rights,
alimentação,
food,
a segurança,
safety,
o trabalho,
work,
a moradia,
housing,
a educação
education,
e a
and
saúde.
health.
A democracia falha
Democracy
quando as
fails
mulheres ganham
when
menos que
women
os homens
earn less than
ou
men
morrem pelas
or
mãos de
die
parceiros
at
e
the hands
familiares.
of partners and family
Ela
members.
perde
It
quando
loses
fecha suas
when it
portas
closes its
e
doors
culpa migrantes
and
pelas
blames
mazelas do
migrants
mundo.
for the world's ills.
A pobreza
Poverty
é tão
is
inimiga
a
da
much
democracia
an enemy of
quanto o
democracy
extremismo.
as extremism.
Por isso,
Therefore,
foi com orgulho
we were proud
que
to
recebemos
receive
da FAO a
confirmation from
confirmação de que o
FAO
Brasil
that Brazil
voltou a
has
sair do
once
mapa
again
da
left
fome
the hunger
este ano de
map in this
2020.
year, 2025.
Mas no mundo,
But in the
ainda há
world,
670
there are
milhões de
still
pessoas famintas
670 million
e
hungry
cerca de
people
2 bilhões
and
e
about
300 milhões
2.3 billion
enfrentam insegurança
face
alimentar.
food insecurity.
A única guerra
The only
que
war
todos podem
of
sair
which
vencedores
everyone
é
can
que
emerge
travamos
victorious
contra a
is the
fome
one
e a
we
pobreza.
wage against hunger and
Esse é o
poverty.
objetivo da Aliança
This is the
Global
goal of the
que
global
lançamos no
alliance we
G20
launched
e que já conta
at the
com o apoio de
G20 and which has the
103
support
países.
of 103
A
countries.
comunidade
The
internacional
international community
precisa rever
needs to
suas
revise
prioridades,
its priorities,
reduzir os gastos com
reduce
guerras
arms
e
spending,
aumentar a ajuda
and
ao
increase
desenvolvimento.
development aid.
Aliviar o serviço
Relieve
da
the
dívida
service
externa
of the
dos
foreign
países mais
debt
pobres,
of the poorest
sobretudo os
countries, above
africanos,
all African
e
nations,
definir
and
padrões
set
mínimos de
minimum
tributação
global
global
tax standards
para que os super
so
ricos
that the super
paguem mais
rich
impostos
pay
que
more
os
taxes
trabalhadores.
than workers.
A democracia também se
Democracy
mede
is
pela
also
capacidade
measured by
de
the
proteger
ability
as
to protect
famílias e a
families
infância.
and the childhood.
As plataformas digitais
Digital platforms
trazem
offer
possibilidade de nos
possibilities for
aproximar
us to come
como
together
jamais
in
havíamos
ways we
imaginado,
never imagined.
mas têm sido usadas
But they
para
have been
semear
used for
intolerância,
sowing
misoginia,
intolerance,
xenofobia e desinformação.
xenophobia, and
A internet
misinformation. The internet
não pode ser terra
cannot be
sem
a
lei.
land of
Cabe ao poder público
lawlessness.
proteger
It's
os
up
mais
to governments
vulneráveis.
to protect the most
Regular
vulnerable.
não é
Regulating
restringir a
does not
liberdade de
mean
expressão,
restraining
é
freedom
garantir
of expression.
que o que
It's
já é
about
ilegal
ensuring
no mundo real
that what is
seja
already
tratado assim
illegal in the
também
real
no
world
ambiente
is
digital,
treated the
no
way in
ambiente
the virtual
virtual.
environment.
Ataques à
Attacks
regulação
on regulation
serve para encobrir
serve to
interesses
cover up
escusos
hidden
e dar
interests
guarida a
and
crimes como
provide
fraudes,
shelter for
tráfico de
crimes
pessoas,
such
pedofilia
as fraud,
e
human
investidas
trafficking,
contra a democracia.
pedophilia, and attacks against
O
democracy.
parlamento brasileiro,
The Brazilian parliament
corretamente,
was right
apressou
to
sem
rush
abordar esse
this to
problema.
address this issue.
Com orgulho,
Last week,
promulguei na
I
última
proudly
semana
enacted
uma das leis mais
one of the
avançadas
world's
do
most
mundo
advanced laws
para
for the
proteger,
protection
para a
of
proteção de
children and
crianças e
adolescents
adolescentes
in
na
the
esfera
digital
digital.
environment.
Também enviamos ao Congresso
Also, we
Nacional
sent draft bills
projeto de lei
to the National
para
Congress
fomentar a
to foster
concorrência nos
competition
mercados digitais
and digital
e para
markets and to
incentivar
encourage the
a instalação
installation
de data
of
centers
sustainable
sustentáveis.
data centers.
Para mitigar os riscos
To
da
mitigate
inteligência
the risks
artificial,
of artificial intelligence,
apostamos na
we
construção
are
de uma
committed to
governança
building
multilateral
multilateral
em linha
governance
com o
in
Pacto
line with the
Digital
global
Global
digital
aprovado neste
compact
plenário
that was
o
approved
ano
in this
passado.
plenary last year.
Senhoras e senhores,
Ladies and gentlemen, your
Na América
excellencies,
Latina e
in Latin
Caribe,
America and the Caribbean,
vivemos momento
we
de
are
crescente
experiencing a
polarização
time
e
of growing
instabilidade.
polarization and instability.
Manter a região como zona de
Maintaining the
paz
region as a zone of
sempre foi
peace
e é a
is
nossa
and was
prioridade.
our priority.
Somos um continente
We
livre
are
de
a
armas de
continent
destruição em
free of
massa,
weapons of mass
sem conflitos
destruction,
étnicos ou
without
religiosos.
ethnic or religious
preocupante.
conflicts.
A
The
equiparação entre a
comparison between
criminalidade e o
crime
terrorismo.
and terrorism is
A forma
worrying.
mais
The
eficaz
most effective way
de combater o tráfico de
combat
drogas
drug
é a
trafficking
cooperação
is to
para
cooperate
reprimir
to suppress
a lavagem de dinheiro
money
e
laundering
limitar o
and
comércio
limit
de armas.
arms trade.
Usar força
Using
letal
lethal
em
force
situações
in
que não
situations
constituem
that do not
conflitos armados
constitute armed
equivale
conflict is
a executar
tantamount
pessoas
to
sem
executing
julgamento.
people without trial.
Outras partes do
Other parts of the
planeta
planet
já testemunharam intervenções que
witnessed
causaram danos maiores
interventions
do
that
que
caused
se
greater
pretendia
damage
evitar,
than intended,
com graves
with serious
consequências humanitárias.
humanitarian consequences.
A via do
The
diálogo
path to
não deve estar
dialogue must
fechada
not be
na
closed
Venezuela.
in Venezuela.
O Haiti
Haiti
tem direito a
has the
futuro
right
livre de
to a
violência.
violence
E é
free
inadmissível
future. And it is
que Cuba seja
unacceptable
listada
that
como o
Cuba
país que
be
patrocina o
listed as a
terrorismo.
country that sponsors
No
terrorism.
conflito
In the
na
conflict
Ucrânia,
in Ukraine, In the
Todos já
conflict in
sabemos que
Ukraine,
não
we
haverá
all
solução militar.
already know that there will be
O
no
recente encontro no
military
Alasca
solution. The
despertou
recent
a
meeting in
esperança de uma
Alaska
saída
raised
negociada.
hopes for a negotiated
É
way
preciso
out.
pavimentar
It's necessary to
caminhos
pave the way
para uma solução
for
realista.
a realistic
Isso
solution.
implica
This
levar em conta as
implies
legítimas
taking into
preocupações de
account
segurança
the
de todas as
legitimate
partes.
security concerns of
A
all
iniciativa
parties.
africana
The African
e o
Initiative
grupo de amigos da
and
paz,
the Friends
criado
for
por
Peace
China e
group
Brasil,
created by China
pode
and
contribuir
Brazil
para promover
can
o diálogo.
help promote dialogue
Nenhuma situação
and a diplomatic
é mais
solution. No
emblemática
situation
do
is
que o
more
uso
emblematic
desproporcional e
of the
ilegal
disproportionate
da
and
força
illegal
do
use
que a
of
da
force
Palestina.
that the one occurring in
Os
Palestine.
atentados terroristas
The terrorist
perpetrados
attacks
pelo Hamas
perpetrated by
são
Hamas are
indefensáveis sob qualquer
indefensible
ângulo.
from any
Mas
angle,
nada,
but nothing,
absolutamente
absolutely
nada,
nothing
justifica o
justifies
genocídio
the ongoing
em curso
genocide
em Gaza.
in Gaza.
Ali, sob toneladas de
Under
escombros,
tons of rubble
estão enterradas
are
dezenas
buried
de milhares
tens
de
of
mulheres e
thousands of
crianças
innocent
inocentes.
women and children.
Ali também estão sepultados o direito
We can see
internacional
that
humanitário
international
e
humanitarian
o
law and the
mito da
myth of
superioridade
ethical
ética do Ocidente.
exceptionalism of the West are
Este
also being
massacre
buried there.
não
This
aconteceria
massacre would not have
sem a
happened
cumplicidade
without
dos
the
que poderiam
complicity of
evitar.
those who could have prevented
Em Gaza,
it. In Gaza,
fome é usada
hunger
como arma
is
de guerra.
used as a weapon of
O
war,
deslocamento
and the
forçado de
forced
populações
displacement of
é
populations
praticado
goes on
impunemente.
unpunished.
Deve expressar
I
minha
express
admiração
my
aos
admirations
judeus
to the Jews
que dentro e
who,
fora de Israel,
inside and
se
outside
opõem
Israel,
a esta punição
oppose this
coletiva.
collective punishment.
O povo
The
palestino
Palestinian people
corre o risco
are
de
at risk
desaparecer.
of disappearing.
Só sobreviverá
They will
como um
only
Estado
survive
independente
with an
integrado à
independent state
comunidade
integrated to
internacional.
the international community.
Esta é a solução
This is the
defendida por
solution
mais de
defended by more
150
than
membros da ONU
150
e afirmada
UN members,
ontem aqui,
reaffirmed
neste mesmo
yesterday here
plenário,
in this very
mas
plenary,
obstruída
but
por
bared by
veto.
a single
É
veto.
lamentável
It is regrettable
presidente
that
Mahmoud
President
Abbas
Mahmoud
tenha
Abbas
sido
was
impedido
prevented
pelo país
by the host
anfitrião de
country
ocupar
of
a
occupying
bancada da
the Palestinian
Palestina
bench
nesse
at this
momento
historical moment.
O alastramento
The
desse
spread
conflito
of this
para o Líbano,
conflict to Lebanon,
para a Síria, e o
Syria,
Irã
Iran,
e o Catar
Qatar
fomenta a
is
escalada
fueling
armamentista
an
sem
unprecedented
precedentes.
arms build-up.
Senhoras presidenta,
Madam President,
bombas e armas nucleares
bombs
não
and
vão
nuclear
nos
weapons
proteger da
will
crise
not
climática.
protect us from the climate
O ano de
crisis. The year
2024
of 24
foi o mais
was
quente
the
já
warmest
registrado.
already
A
registered.
COP30 em Belém, no
COP30 in
Brasil,
the city of Belém,
será a
Brazil,
COP da
with the
verdade.
COP of truth.
Será o momento
It will
dos
be
líderes
the time
mundiais
for world leaders
provarem
to prove
a seriedade
the
de seu
seriousness of their
compromisso com o
commitment to
planeta.
the planet.
Sem ter o quadro
Without
completo das
a complete
contribuições
picture
nacionalmente determinadas,
of the
a chamada
NDCs,
NDC,
nationally determined
caminharemos de olhos
contributions,
vendados para um verdadeiro
walking
abismo.
blindfolded towards
O Brasil
the abyss.
se comprometeu a
Has
reduzir
committed
entre
to
59% e
reducing its emissions by
67% suas
59 to
emissões,
and
abrangendo
67%,
todos os gases de
covering
efeito
all
estufa
greenhouse
em
gases
todos os
and
setores da
all
economia.
sectors of the economy.
Nações em desenvolvimento
Developing nations
enfrentam a mudança do
face
clima
climate
ao
change
mesmo tempo em
while
que lutam
grappling
contra outros
with
desafios.
other challenges.
Enquanto isso,
Meanwhile,
países ricos
rich countries
usufruem
enjoy
de padrão de
a
vida
standard
obtido às
of living
custas de 200
reached
anos
at
de
the
emissões de
expense of
gases.
200 years of greenhouse
Exigir
gas
maior
emissions.
ambição e maior acesso
greater
a
ambition
recursos
and greater
e
access
tecnologias
to
não é uma
resources and
questão de
technology.
caridade,
It's not a matter of
é
charity,
apenas uma
but
questão
of
de justiça.
justice.
A corrida
The
por minérios
race for
críticos
critical
essenciais
minerals,
para a
essential
transição
for
energética
energy
não
transition,
pode
cannot
reproduzir a lógica
reproduce the
predatória
predatory
que
and
marcou
asymmetrical
os últimos
logic
séculos.
that has
Em
characterized
Belém,
recent centuries. In
o
Belém
mundo vai
City,
conhecer
the
a
world
realidade
will
da
learn
Amazônia.
about the
O
reality of
Brasil
the
já
Amazon.
reduziu pela metade
Brazil has already
o
reduced
desmatamento na região
deforestation by
nos
half
dois
in the
últimos anos.
region in the last 2 years.
Erradicá-lo requer
Eradicating
garantia,
it
condições
requires
dignas de vida para
ensuring
seus milhões
decent
de
living
habitantes.
conditions for its millions of
Fomentar o
inhabitants.
desenvolvimento
Promoting
sustentável
sustainable development
é o objetivo
is the
do Fundo
objective of the
Florestas
Tropical
Tropicais
Forest
para
Forever
sempre,
Facility,
que o Brasil
which
pretende
Brazil
lançar
intends to launch
para
to
remunerar
compensate
os países que
countries
mantêm
that
suas
keep their
florestas em
forests
pé.
standing.
É chegado o momento de passar
But the time has
da
come
fase
to
da
prove,
negociação
to move
para a
from the
etapa da
negotiation phase to the
implementação.
implementation
O mundo
stage.
deve
The
muito ao
world
regime
owes a lot to the
criado pela
regime
Convenção
created
do
by the
Clima.
Climate Convention.
Mas é necessário
Climate change
trazer o combate à
needs
mudança
to
do
be
clima
brought
para
to
o
the
coração
heart
da
of the
ONU
UN
para que ela tenha
so that
a
it
atenção
gets
que
the
merece.
attention it
Um
deserves.
conselho
A
vinculado à
council
Assembleia Geral
linked to the General
com força e
Assembly
legitimidade
with the power
para
and
monitorar
legitimacy to
compromissos
monitor
dará
commitments,
coerência
provide
à ação climática.
coherence to climate
Trata-se
action.
de um passo
This is a
fundamental
fundamental step
na direção de uma
towards
reforma
a
mais
broader
abrangente da
reform of the
organização,
organization,
que contemple também
which would
um
also
Conselho de
include
Segurança
an
ampliado
expanded
nas
Security
duas
Council
categorias
in
de
the
seus
two
membros.
member categories.
Poucas áreas
Few areas
retrocederam
have
tanto
worsened
como o
as much
sistema
as the
multilateral de comércio.
multilateral trading system.
Medidas
Unilateral
unilaterais
measures
transformam em
have
letra
rendered
morta
fundamental principles
princípios basilares
such
como a
as the
cláusula
most
de
favored
nação
nations
mais
clauses
favorecida.
meaningless.
Desorganizam cadeias de valor
They have
e
disrupted
lançam a economia
value
mundial
chains and
em
through the
uma
global
espiral
economy
perniciosa
into
de
a
preços
pernicious
altos e
spiral of
estagnação.
high prices and
É urgente
stagnation. It is urgent
refundar o OMC
to be
em
to
bases
refound the
modernas e
WTO
flexíveis.
based on modern
Senhoras
and flexible
e senhores,
foundation.
claro, com as
With
8
the 8
décadas de existência da
decades
ONU,
of the UN,
se ainda
UN's
estivesse entre nós,
existence, if they were still among us,
provavelmente usariam
they would
esta
use this
tribuna
platform
para
to
lembrar
remember
que o autoritarismo,
that authoritarianism,
a degradação
environmental
ambiental e a
degradation, and
desigualdade
inequality
não são
are not
inexoráveis. Que
relentless.
os únicos derrotados
That the only
são os que
ones
cruzam os
defeated are
braços
those who stand
resignados.
idly by,
Que
resigned.
podemos vencer os falsos profetas e
Resignate,
oligarcas
and
que
that we can
exploram
defeat
o
the
medo
false
e
prophets and
monetizam o
oligarchs
ódio.
who exploit fear
E
and
que o
monetize
amanhã
hate, and that
é feito de
tomorrow
escolhas
is
diárias
made of daily
e é preciso
choices,
coragem
and it
de
takes
agir
courage
para
to act
transformá-lo.
to transform it.
No futuro que o Brasil
In the
vislumbra,
future that Brazil
não há
envisions,
espaço
there
para a
is no
reedição
room
de
for the
rivalidades
reenactment
ideológicas
of
ou
ideological
esferas de
rivalries or
A
spheres of
confrontação
effort.
é
Confrontation is
inevitável.
not inevitable.
Precisamos de
We
lideranças
need
com
leaders
clareza de
with
visão,
clear
que
visions
entendam que a
who
ordem
understand
internacional
that the
não
international
é
order
jogo
is
de
not a
soma zero.
zero-sum game.
O século
The
XXI
21st
será
century
cada
will
vez
be
mais
increasingly
multipolar. Para se
multipolar.
manter pacífico,
For it
não
to
pode
remain
deixar de ser
peaceful,
multilateral.
it cannot fail
O Brasil
fall
confere
to multilateral.
crescente importância à
Brazil
União
is
Europeia,
giving
à
increasing
União Africana,
importance to the European
à
Union, the
ASEAN,
African Union,
à CELAC,
ASEAN,
aos
CELAC,
BRICS e ao
BRICS,
G20.
and the G20.
A voz do
The
Sul
voice
global
of the global South
deve ser
must
respeitada e
be
ouvida.
heard.
A ONU,
The UN,
a ONU tem hoje
the UN
quase
has
4
today
vezes
almost
mais
4
membros do que os
times more members
51
than
que estiveram
the
na
51
fundação.
who were at its
Nossa
foundation.
missão histórica
Our
é
historic
de torná-la
mission
novamente
is to make it once
portadora de
again a
esperança
barrier of
e
hope
promotora
and
da
a
igualdade,
promoter
da
of
paz,
equality,
do desenvolvimento
peace,
sustentável,
sustainable
e da
development,
diversidade
diversity,
e da
and
tolerância.
tolerance.
Que Deus
May
nos
God
abençoe a
bless
todos
us
e muito
all.
obrigado.
And thank you very much.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Federative Republic of Brazil, The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Donald Trump, President of the United States of America. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
Thank you very much. Very much appreciated. And I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter, because the teleprompter is not working. I feel very happy to be up here with you nevertheless, and that way you speak more from the heart. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble. Hello, Madam First Lady. Thank you very much for being here. And Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, First Lady of the United States, distinguished delegates, ambassadors, and world leaders. 6 years have passed since I last stood in this grand hall and addressed a world that was prosperous and at peace in my first term. Since that day, the guns of war have shattered the peace I forged on 2 continents. An era of calm and stability gave way to one of the great crises of our time. And here in the United States, 4 years of weakness, lawlessness, and radicalism under the last administration delivered our nation into a repeated set of disasters. 1 year ago, our country was in deep trouble, but today, just 8 months into my administration, we are the hottest country anywhere in the world, and there is no other country even close. America is blessed with the strongest economy, the strongest borders, the strongest military, the strongest friendships, and the strongest spirit of any nation on the face of the earth. This is indeed the golden age of America. We are rapidly reversing the economic calamity we inherited from the previous administration, including ruinous price increases and record-setting inflation like we've never had before. Under my leadership, energy costs are down, gasoline prices are down, grocery prices are down, mortgage rates are down, and inflation has been defeated. The only thing that's up is the stock market, which just hit a record high. In fact, it hit a record high 48 times in the last short period of time. Growth is surging, manufacturing is booming. The stock market, as I said, is doing better than it's ever done. And all of you in this room benefit by that, almost everybody. And importantly, workers' wages are rising at the fastest pace in more than 60 years. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? In 4 years of President Biden, we had less than $1 trillion of new investment into the United States. In just 8 months since I took office, we have secured commitments and money already paid for $17 trillion. Think of it, 4 years, less than $1 trillion, 8 months, much more than $17 trillion is being invested in the United States, and it's now pouring in from all parts of the world. We've implemented the largest tax cuts in American history and the largest regulation cuts in American history, making this once and again the best country on earth to do business. And many of the people in this room are investing in America, and it's turned out to be an awfully good investment during this 8-month period. In my first term, I built the greatest economy in the history of the world. We had the best economy ever, history of the world. And I'm doing the same thing again, but this time it's actually much bigger and even better. The numbers far surpass my record-setting first term. On our southern border, we have successfully repelled a colossal invasion. And for the last 4 months, and that's 4 months in a row, the number of illegal aliens admitted and entering our country has been 0. Hard to believe, because if you look back just a year ago, it was millions and millions of people pouring in from all over the world, from prisons, from mental institutions, drug dealers. All over the world they came. They just poured into our country with the ridiculous open border policy of the Biden administration. Our message is very simple. If you come illegally into the United States, you're going to jail, or you're going back to where you came from, or perhaps even further than that. You know what that means. I want to thank the country of El Salvador for the successful and professional job they've done in receiving and jailing so many criminals that entered our country. And it was under the previous administration that the number became record-setting, and they're all being taken out. We have no choice. And other countries have no choice, because other countries are in the exact same situation with immigration. It's destroying your country, and you have to do something about it. On the world stage, America is respected again like it has never been respected before. You think about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, or 1 year ago, we were a laughingstock all over the world. At the NATO summit in June, virtually all NATO members formally committed to increase defense spending at my request from 2% to 5% of GDP, making our alliance far stronger and more powerful than it was ever before. In May, I traveled to the Middle East to visit my friends and rebuild our partnerships in the Gulf and those valued relationships with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE, and other countries are now, I believe, closer than ever before. My administration has negotiated one historic trade deal after another, including with the United Kingdom, the European Union, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, and many, many others. Likewise, in a period of just 7 months, I have ended 7 unendable wars. They said they were unendable. You're never going to get them solved. Some were going for 31 years, 2 of them, 31, think of it, 31 years. One was 36 years. One was 28 years. I ended 7 wars. And in all cases, they were raging with countless thousands of people being killed. This includes Cambodia and Thailand, Kosovo and Serbia, the Congo and Rwanda, a vicious, violent war that was, Pakistan and India, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, and Armenia and Azerbaijan. It included all of them. No president or prime minister, and for that matter, no other country has ever done anything close to that. And I did it in just 7 months. It's never happened before. There's never been anything like that. I'm very honored to have done it. It's too bad that I had to do these things instead of the United Nations doing them. And sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them. I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen. But she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the two things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much. And by the way, it's working now. It just went on. Thank you. I think I should just do it the other way. It's easier. Thank you very much. I didn't think of it at the time because I was too busy working to save millions of lives. That is the saving and stopping of these wars. But later I realized that the United Nations wasn't there for us. They weren't there. I thought of it really after the fact, not during these negotiations, which were not easy. That being the case, what is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous, tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war. The only thing that solves war and wars is action. Now, after ending all of these wars and also earlier negotiating the Abraham Accords, which is a very big thing for which our country received no credit, never receives credit. Everyone says that I should get the Nobel Peace Prize for each one of these achievements. But for me, the real prize will be the sons and daughters who live to grow up with the mothers and fathers, because millions of people are no longer being killed in endless and unglorious wars. What I care about is not winning prizes, it's saving lives. We saved millions and millions of lives with the 7 wars. And we have others that we're working on, and you know that. Many years ago, a very successful real estate developer in New York, known as Donald J. Trump, I bid on the renovation and rebuilding of this very United Nations complex. I remember it so well. I said at the time that I would do it for $500 million, rebuilding everything. It would be beautiful. I used to talk about, I'm going to give you marble floors. They're going to give you terrazzo. I'm going to give you the best of everything. You're going to have mahogany walls. They're going to give you plastic. But they decided to go in another direction, which was much more expensive at the time, and which actually produced a far inferior product. And I realized that they did not know what they were doing when it came to construction, and that their building concepts were so wrong, and the product that they were proposing to build was so bad and so costly. It was going to cost them a fortune. And I said, and wait till you see the overruns. Well, I turned out to be right. They had massive cost overruns and spent between $2 and $4 billion on the building and did not even get the marble floors that I promised them. You walk on terrazzo. Do you notice that? As far as I'm concerned, frankly, looking at the building and getting stuck on the escalator, they still haven't finished the job. They still haven't finished. That was years ago. The project was so corrupt that Congress actually asked me to testify before them on the tremendous waste of money, because it turned out that they had no idea what it was, but they knew it was anywhere between $2 and $4 billion as opposed to $500 million with a guarantee. But they had no idea, and I said it cost much more than $5 billion. Unfortunately, many things in the United Nations are happening just like that, but on an even much bigger scale, much, much bigger. Very sad to see whether the UN can manage to play a productive role. I've come here today to offer the hand of American leadership and friendship to any nation in this assembly that is willing to join us in forging a safer, more prosperous world. And it's a world that we'll be much happier with. A dramatically better future is within our reach. But to get there, we must reject the failed approaches of the past and work together to confront some of the greatest threats in history. There is no more serious danger to our planet today than the most powerful and destructive weapons ever devised by man, of which the United States, as you know, has many. Just as I did in my first term, I've made containing these threats a top priority, starting with the nation of Iran. My position is very simple. The world's #1 sponsor of terror can never be allowed to possess the most dangerous weapon. That's why shortly after taking office, I sent the so-called Supreme Leader a letter making a generous offer. I extended a pledge of full cooperation in exchange for a suspension of Iran's nuclear program. The regime's answer was to continue their constant threats to their neighbors and U.S. interests throughout the region and some great countries that are right nearby. Today, many of Iran's former military commanders, in fact, I can say almost all of them, are no longer with us. They're dead. And 3 months ago, in Operation Midnight Hammer, 7 American B-2 bombers dropped the 14 30,000-pound each bombs on Iran's key nuclear facilities, totally obliterating everything. No other country on earth could have done what we did. No other country has the equipment to do what we did. We have the greatest weapons on earth. We hate to use them. But we did something that for 22 years people wanted to do. With Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity demolished, I immediately brokered an end to the 12-day war, as it's called, between Israel and Iran, with both sides agreeing to fight no longer. As everyone knows, I have also been deeply engaged in seeking a ceasefire in Gaza. Have to get that done. Have to get it done. Unfortunately, Hamas has repeatedly rejected reasonable offers to make peace. We can't forget October 7th, can we? Now, as if to encourage continued conflict, some of this body is seeking to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. The rewards would be too great for Hamas terrorists for their atrocities. This would be a reward for these horrible atrocities, including October 7th, even while they refuse to release the hostages or accept a ceasefire. Instead of giving to Hamas and giving so much, because they've taken so much, they have taken so much. This could have been solved so long ago. But instead of giving in to Hamas's ransom demands, those who want peace should be united with one message: release the hostages now. Just release the hostages now. Thank you. Thank you. As we have got to come together, and we will come together, got to get it done. We have to stop the war in Gaza immediately. We have to stop it. We have to get it done. We have to negotiate, immediately have to negotiate peace. We got to get the hostages back. We want all 20 back. We don't want 2 and 4. As you know, I got, along with Steve Witkoff and others that helped us, Marco Rubio, we got most of them back. We were involved in all of them. But I always said the last 20 are going to be the hardest, and that's exactly what happened. We have to get them back now. We don't want to get back 2, and then another 2, and then 1, and then 3. Have this process. No, we want them all back, and we want the actually 38 dead bodies back too. Those parents came to me, and they want them back, and they want them back very quickly and very badly, as though they were alive. They want them. They want them every bit as much as if their son or daughter were alive. I've also been working relentlessly, stopping the killing in Ukraine. I thought that would be, of the 7 wars that I stopped, I thought that would be the easiest because of my relationship with President Putin, which had always been a good one. I thought that was going to be the easiest one. But you know, in war, you never know what's going to happen. There are always lots of surprises, both good and bad. Everyone thought Russia would win this war in 3 days. But it didn't work out that way. It was supposed to be just a quick little skirmish. It's not making Russia look good. It's making them look bad. No matter what happens from here on out, this was something that should have taken a matter of days, certainly less than a week. And they've been fighting for 3.5 years and killing anywhere from 5 to 7,000 young soldiers, mostly soldiers, on both sides, every single week, from 5 to 7,000 dead young people, and some in cities, much smaller numbers, where rockets are shot, where drones are dropped. This war would never have started if I were president. This was a war that should have never happened. It shows you what leadership is, what bad leadership can do to a country. Look what happened to the United States, and look where we are right now in just a short period of time. The only question now is how many more lives will be needlessly lost on both sides. China and India are the primary funders of the ongoing war by continuing to purchase Russian oil. But inexcusably, even NATO countries have not cut off much Russian energy and Russian energy products, which, as you know, I found out about 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't happy. Think of it. They're funding the war against themselves. Who the hell ever heard of that one? In the event that Russia is not ready to make a deal to end the war, then the United States is fully prepared to impose a very strong round of powerful tariffs, which would stop the bloodshed, I believe, very quickly. But for those tariffs to be effective, European nations, all of you are gathered here right now, would have to join us in adopting the exact same measures. I mean, you're much closer to the city. We have an ocean in between. You're right there. And Europe has to step it up. They can't be doing what they're doing. They're buying oil and gas from Russia while they're fighting Russia. It's embarrassing to them, and it was very embarrassing to them when I found out about it, I can tell you that. But they have to immediately cease all energy purchases from Russia. Otherwise, we're all wasting a lot of time. So I'm ready to discuss this. We're going to discuss it today with the European nations, all gathered here. I'm sure they're thrilled to hear me speak about it, but that's the way it is. I like to speak my mind and speak the truth. As we seek to reduce the threat of dangerous weapons today, I'm also calling on every nation to join us in ending the development of biological weapons once and for all. And biological is terrible, and nuclear is even beyond, and we include nuclear in that. We want to have a cessation of the development of nuclear weapons. We know, and I get to view it all the time. Sir, would you like to see? And I look at weapons that are so powerful that we just can't ever use them. If we ever use them, the world literally might come to an end. There would be no United Nations to be talking about. There would be no nothing. Just a few years ago, reckless experiments overseas gave us a devastating global pandemic. Yet despite that worldwide catastrophe, many countries are continuing extremely risky research into bioweapons and man-made pathogens. This is unbelievably dangerous. To prevent potential disasters, I'm announcing today that my administration will lead an international effort to enforce biological weapons convention, which is going to be meeting with the top leaders of the world by pioneering an AI verification system that everyone can trust. Hopefully the UN can play a constructive role, and it will also be one of the early projects under AI. Let's see how good it is, because a lot of people are saying it could be one of the great things ever, but it also can be dangerous, but it can be put to tremendous use and tremendous good, and this would be an example of that. Not only is the UN not solving the problems it should, too often, it's actually creating new problems for us to solve. The best example is the number one political issue of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migration. It's uncontrolled. Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders. In 2024, the UN budgeted $372 million in cash assistance to support an estimated 624,000 migrants journeying into the United States. Think of that. The UN is supporting people that are illegally coming into the United States, and then we have to get them out. The UN also provided food, shelter, transportation, and debit cards to illegal aliens. Can you believe that? On the way to infiltrate our southern border. Millions of people came through that southern border. Just a year ago, millions and millions of people were pouring in, 25 million altogether over the 4 years of the incompetent Biden administration. And now we have it stopped, totally stopped. In fact, they're not even coming anymore because they know they can't get through. But what took place is totally unacceptable. The UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them and not finance them. In the United States, we reject the idea that mass numbers of people from foreign lands can be permitted to travel halfway around the world, trample our borders, violate our sovereignty, cause unmitigated crime, and deplete our social safety net. We have reasserted that America belongs to the American people, and I encourage all countries to take their own stand in defense of their citizens as well. You have to do that because I see it. I'm not mentioning names. I see it, and I can call every single one of them out. You're destroying your countries. They're being destroyed. Europe is in serious trouble. They've been invaded by a force of illegal aliens like nobody's ever seen before. Illegal aliens are pouring into Europe. Nobody is ever, and nobody's doing anything to change it, to get them out. It's not sustainable. And because they choose to be politically correct, they're doing just absolutely nothing about it. And I have to say, I look at London where you have a terrible mayor, terrible, terrible mayor. And it's been so changed, so changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law. But you're in a different country. You can't do that. Both the immigration and their suicidal energy ideas will be the death of Western Europe if something is not done immediately. This cannot be sustained. What makes the world so beautiful is that each country is unique. But to stay this way, every sovereign nation must have the right to control their own borders. You have the right to control your borders, as we do now, and to limit the sheer numbers of migrants entering their countries and paid for by the people of that nation that were there and that built that particular nation at the time. They put their blood, sweat, tears, money into that country, and now they're being ruined. Proud nations must be allowed to protect their communities and prevent their societies from being overwhelmed by people they have never seen before, with different customs, religions, with different everything. Where migrants have violated laws, lodged false asylum claims, or claimed refugee status for illegitimate reasons, they should in many cases be immediately sent home. And while we will always have a big heart for places and people that are struggling and truly compassionate, answers will be given. We have to solve the problem, and we have to solve it in their countries, not create new problems in our countries. And we are very helpful to a lot of countries that are just not able to send their people anymore. They used to send them to us in caravans of 25,000, 30,000 people each. These massive caravans of people pouring into our country, totally unchecked and unvetted. But not anymore. According to the Council of Europe in 2024, almost 50% of inmates in German prisons were foreign nationals or migrants. In Austria, the number was 53% of the people in prisons were from places that weren't from where they are now. In Greece, the number was 54%, and in Switzerland, beautiful Switzerland, 72% of the people in prisons are from outside of Switzerland. When your prisons are filled with so-called asylum seekers who repaid kindness, and that's what they did, they repaid kindness with crime, it's time to end the failed experiment of open borders. You have to end it now. See, I can tell you, I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell. In America, we've taken bold action to swiftly shut down uncontrolled migration. Once we started detaining and deporting everyone who crossed the border, and removing illegal aliens from the United States, they simply stopped coming. They're not coming anymore. We're getting a lot of credit, but they're not coming anymore. This was a humanitarian act for all involved, because on the trips up, thousands of people a week were dying. Women were being raped. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Raped, horribly beaten, raped. On the trip up, the journey up, it was a long walk. It was a long, arduous journey, indeed. And it was also a historic victory against human trafficking throughout the region. What we did was a victory, and we saved so many lives of people that wouldn't make the journey. That journey was loaded up with death. Loaded up with death. Dead bodies all along the roads of jungles to get up. They go through jungles, they go through areas so hot you couldn't breathe. They were dying of suffocation, areas so hot that you couldn't breathe. Dead bodies all over. By them not coming, we're saving tremendous numbers of lives. My people have done a fantastic job in doing what they did, and the American public agrees with it. I mean, I was very proud to see this morning I have the highest poll numbers I've ever had. Part of it is because of what we've done on the border. I guess the other part is what we've done on the economy. Joe Biden's policies empowered murderous gangs, human smugglers, child traffickers, drug cartels, and prisoners from all over the world. The previous administration also lost nearly 300,000 children. Think of that. They lost more than 300,000 children, little children, who were trafficked into the United States on the Biden watch, many of whom have been raped, exploited, and abused, and sold. Sold. Nobody talks about that. The fake news doesn't write about it. With many others, young children who are missing or dead. And we found a lot of these children, and we're sending them back, and we've been sending them back to their parents. They said, nobody knows who they are. They said, where do you come from? And they'll give us a country, and we'll find out, and we'll figure it out, and we'll bring them back to their homes. And the mother and father rush to the door, and their tears in their eyes. They can't believe that they're seeing their son or daughter, their little son or daughter again. We've done almost 30,000 of them so far. Any system that results in the mass trafficking of children is inherently evil. Yet that is exactly what the globalist migration agenda has done, and it's what it's all about. In America, those days, as you know, are over. The Trump administration is working, and we are continuing to work to track down the villains that are causing this problem, and also, as I said, to get back the 30,000 we've already returned. Now I think we're going to have another. We're going to find a lot. You're not going to find all of them. 300, more than 300,000. They're lost or they're dead. They're lost or they're dead because of the animals that did this. To protect our citizens, I've also designated multiple savage drug cartels as far as and you see this, and you see it happening right before your eyes. Let's put it this way. People don't like taking big loads of drugs in boats anymore. There aren't too many boats that are traveling on the seas by Venezuela. They tend not to want to travel very quickly anymore. And we've virtually stopped drugs coming into our country by sea. We call them the water drugs. They kill hundreds of thousands of people. I've also designated multiple savage drug cartels as far as foreign terrorist organizations, along with two bloodthirsty transnational gangs, probably the worst gangs anywhere in the world, MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. Tren de Aragua is from Venezuela, by the way. Such organizations torture, maim, mutilate, and murder with impunity. They're the enemies of all humanity. For this reason, we've recently begun using the supreme power of the United States military to destroy Venezuelan terrorists and trafficking networks led by Nicolas Maduro. To every terrorist thug smuggling poisonous drugs into the United States of America, please be warned that we will blow you out of existence. That's what we're doing. We have no choice. Can't let it happen. They're destroying I believe we lost 300,000 people last year to drugs, 300,000. Fentanyl and other drugs. Each boat that we sink carries drugs that would kill more than 25,000 Americans. We will not let that happen. Energy is another area where the United States is now thriving like never before. We're getting rid of the falsely named renewables. By the way, they're a joke. They don't work. They're too expensive. They're not strong enough to fire up the plants that you need to make your country great. The wind doesn't blow. Those big windmills are so pathetic and so bad, so expensive to operate. And they have to be rebuilt all the time, and they start to rust and rot. Most expensive energy ever conceived, and it's actually energy. You're supposed to make money with energy, not lose money. You lose money, the governments have to subsidize. You can't put them out without massive subsidies. And most of them are built in China, and I give China a lot of credit. They build them, but they have very few wind farms. So why is it that they build them and they send them all over the world, but they barely use them? You know what they use? Coal. They use gas. They use almost anything, but they don't like wind. But they sure as hell like selling the windmills. Europe, on the other hand, is a long way to go, with many countries being on the brink of destruction because of the green energy agenda. And I give a lot of credit to Germany. Germany was being led down a very sick path, both on immigration, by the way, and on energy. They were going green, and they were going bankrupt. And the new leadership came in, and they went back to where they were, with fossil fuel and with nuclear, which is good. It's now safe. You can do it properly. But they went back to where they were, and they opened up a lot of different plants, energy producing plants, and they're doing well. I give Germany a lot of credit for that. They've said this is a disaster, what's happening. They were going all green. All green is all bankrupt. That's what it represents. And it's not politically correct. I'll be very badly criticized for saying it, but I'm here to tell the truth. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I'm in New York City. I'm feeling a lot safer. Crime, we're getting crime down. And by the way, speaking of crime, Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. was the crime capital of America. Now it's after 12 days, it's a totally safe city. Everyone's going out to dinner. They're going out to restaurants. Your wife can walk down the middle of the street with or without you. Nothing's going to happen. My people have done a fantastic job. And yes, I called in the National Guard, and the National Guard took care of business, and they weren't politically correct, but they took care of business. We got 1,700 career criminals out, brought them back to where they came from, the countries where they came from, or put them in jails. Washington, D.C. is now a totally safe city again, and I welcome you to come. In fact, we'll have dinner together at a local restaurant, and we'll be able to walk. We don't have to go by an armor-plated vehicle. We'll walk right over there from the White House. They've given up their powerful edge, a lot of the countries that we're talking about, in oil and gas, such as essentially closing the great North Sea oil. Oh, the North Sea, I know it so well. Aberdeen was the oil capital of Europe, and there's tremendous oil that hasn't been found in the North Sea. Tremendous oil. And I was with the Prime Minister I respect and like a lot, and I said, you're sitting with the greatest asset. They essentially closed it by making it so highly taxed that no developer, no oil company can go there. They have tremendous oil left, and more importantly, they have tremendous oil that hasn't even been found yet. And what a tremendous asset for the United Kingdom. And I hope the Prime Minister is listening, because I told it to him 3 days in a row. That's all he heard. North Sea oil, North Sea, because I want to see them do well. I want to stop seeing them ruining that beautiful Scottish and English countryside with windmills and massive solar panels that go 7 miles by 7 miles, taking away farmland. But we're not letting this happen in America. In 1982, the executive director of the United Nations Environmental Program predicted that by the year 2000, climate change would cause a global catastrophe. He said that it will be irreversible, as any nuclear holocaust would be. This is what they said at the United Nations. What happened? Here we are. Another UN official stated in 1989 that within a decade, entire nations could be wiped off the map by global warming. Not happening. You know, it used to be global cooling. If you look back years ago in the 1920s and the 1930s, they said, global cooling will kill the world. We have to do something. Then they said global warming will kill the world. But then it started getting cooler. So now they could just call it climate change, because that way they can't miss. It's climate change. Because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, there's climate change. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. Climate change, no matter what happens, you're involved in that. No more global warming, no more global cooling. All of these predictions made by the United Nations and many others, often for bad reasons, were wrong. They were made by stupid people that have cost their countries fortunes and given those same countries no chance for success. If you don't get away from this green scam, your country is going to fail. And I'm really good at predicting things, you know. They actually said during the campaign, they had a hat, the best-selling hat. Trump was right about everything. And I don't say that in a braggadocious way, but it's true. I've been right about everything. And I'm telling you that if you don't get away from the green energy scam, your country is going to fail. And if you don't stop people that you've never seen before, that you have nothing in common with, your country is going to fail. I'm the President of the United States, but I worry about Europe. I love Europe. I love the people of Europe. And I hate to see it being devastated by energy and immigration. This double-tailed monster destroys everything in its wake, and they cannot let that happen any longer. You're doing it because you want to be nice. You want to be politically correct, and you're destroying your heritage. They must take control strongly and immediately of the unmitigated immigration disaster and the fake energy catastrophe before it's too late. The carbon footprint is a hoax made up by people with evil intentions, and they're heading down a path of total destruction. You know, the carbon footprint was a big, big thing a few years ago. I remember hearing about the carbon footprint, and then President Obama would get into Air Force One, a massive Boeing 747, and not a new one, an old one with old engines that spew everything into the atmosphere. He'd talk about the carbon footprint, we must do so. Then he'd get in and he'd fly from Washington to Hawaii to play a round of golf. And then he'd get back onto that big, beautiful plane and he'd fly back and he'd talk about, again, global warming and the carbon footprint. It's a con job. At extreme cost and expense, Europe reduced its own carbon footprint by 37%. Think of that. Congratulations, Europe. Great job. You cost yourself a lot of jobs, a lot of factories closed, but you reduced the carbon footprint by 37%. However, for all of that sacrifice and much more, it's been totally wiped out and then some by a global increase of 54%. Much of it coming from China and other countries that are thriving around China, which now produces more CO2 than all the other developed nations in the world. So all of these countries are working so hard on the carbon footprint, which is nonsense, by the way. It's nonsense. You know, it's interesting. In the United States, we have still radicalized environmentalists, and they want the factories to stop. Everything should stop. No more cows. We don't want cows anymore. I guess they want to kill all the cows. They want to do things that are just unbelievable, and you have it too. But you know, we have a border, strong, and we have a shape, and that shape doesn't just go straight up. That shape is amorphous when it comes to the atmosphere. And if we had the most clean air, and I think we do, we have very clean air. We have the cleanest air we've had in many, many years. But the problem is that other countries, like China, which has air that's a little bit rough, it blows. And no matter what you're doing down here, the air up here tends to get very dirty because it comes in from other countries where their air isn't so clean. And the environmentalists refuse to acknowledge that. Same thing with garbage. In Asia, they dump much of their garbage right into the ocean. And over about a 1 week and 2 week journey, it flows right past Los Angeles. You've seen it. Massive amounts of garbage, almost too much to do anything about, flowing past Los Angeles, past San Francisco. And then somebody will get in trouble because he dropped a cigarette on the beach. The whole thing is crazy. The primary effect of these brutal green energy policies has not been to help the environment, but to redistribute manufacturing and industrial activity from developed countries that follow the insane rules that are put down to polluting countries that break the rules and are making a fortune. They're making a fortune. European electricity bills are now 4 to 5 times more expensive than those in China, and 2 to 3 times higher than the United States. And our bills are coming way down. You probably see that our gasoline prices are way down. You know, we have an expression, drill, baby,
Nós reduzimos os custos de energia porque nós faremos, como vamos fazer tudo isso, reduzir os custos de energia, e os custos diminuíram nos Estados Unidos.
Very uncommon to see one in some of these countries.
Por exemplo, se você olhar
electric costs are so high. So while the US has approximately 1,300 heat-related deaths annually, it's a lot. Europe loses
Mas
more
nós
than
nos Estados Unidos
175,000 people to heat deaths each year.
Usar eles e evitar aumento da temperatura, porque é muito caro também usar
all in the name of pretending to stop the global warming hoax. The entire globalist concept of asking successful industrialized nations to inflict pain on themselves and radically disrupt their entire societies must be rejected completely and totally, and it must be immediate. That's why in America I withdrew from the fake Paris Climate Accord, where, by the way, America was paying so much more than every country. Others weren't paying. China didn't have to pay until 2030. Russia was given an old standard that was easy to meet, a 1990 standard. But for the United States, we're supposed to pay like $1 trillion. And I said, this is another scam. The fact is, the United States has been taken advantage of by the world for many, many years, but not any longer, as you probably noticed. I unleashed massive energy production and signed historic executive orders to hunt for oil, but we don't have to do much hunting because we have the most oil of any nation anywhere, oil and gas in the world. And if you add coal, we have the most of any nation in the world. Clean, I call it clean, beautiful coal. You can do things today with coal that you couldn't have done 10 years ago, 15 years. So I have a little standing order in the White House. Never use the word coal, only use the words clean, beautiful coal. Sounds much better, doesn't it? But we stand ready to provide any country with abundant, affordable energy supplies if you need them, when most of you do. We're proudly exporting energy all over the world. We're now the largest exporter. In the United States, we want trade and robust commerce with all nations, everybody. We want to help nations. We're going to help nations. But it must also be fair and reciprocal. The challenge with trade is much the same with climate. The countries that followed the rules, all their factories have been plundered. It's really sad to watch. They've been broken. They've been broken by countries that broke the rules. That's why the United States is now applying tariffs to other countries, and much as these tariffs were for many years applied to us, uncontrollably applied to us. We've used tariffs as a defense mechanism under the Trump administration, including my first term, where hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs were taken in. And by the way, we had the lowest inflation, and now we have very low inflation. The only thing different is that we have hundreds of billions of dollars flowing into our country. But this is how we will ensure that the system works for everyone. And is sustainable into the future. We're also using tariffs to defend our sovereignty and security throughout the world, including against nations that have taken advantage of former U.S. administrations for decades, including the most corrupt, incompetent administration in history, the sleepy Joe Biden administration. Brazil now faces major tariffs in response to its unprecedented efforts to interfere in the rights and freedoms of our American citizens and others, with censorship, repression, weaponization, judicial corruption, and targeting of political critics in the United States. I have a little problem saying this because I must tell you, I was walking in and the leader of Brazil was walking out. We saw him and I saw him, he saw me, and we embraced. And then I'm saying, can you believe I'm going to be saying this in just 2 minutes? But we actually agreed that we would meet next week. We didn't have much time to talk, like about 20 seconds. They were in retrospect, I'm glad I waited because this thing didn't work out too well. But we did talk, we had a good talk, and we agreed to meet next week, if that's of interest. But he seemed like a very nice man, actually. He liked me, I liked him. But if you, and I only do business with people I like. When I don't like them, I don't like them. But we had, at least for about 39 seconds, we had excellent chemistry. It's a good sign. But also in the past, Brazil, can you believe this, unfairly tariffed our nation, but now because of our tariffs, we are hitting them back, and we're hitting them back very hard. As president, I will always defend our national sovereignty and the rights of American citizens. So I'm very sorry to say this, that Brazil is doing poorly and will continue to do poorly. They can only do well when they're working with us. Without us, they will fail, just as others have failed. It's true. Next year, the United States will celebrate the 250th anniversary of our glorious independence, a testament to enduring power and American freedom and spirit. We will also be proudly hosting the 2026 FIFA World Cup, and shortly thereafter, the 2028 Olympics, which is going to be very exciting. I hope you all come. I hope that countless people from all over the globe will take part of these will be great celebrations of liberty and human achievement, and that together we all can rejoice in the miracles of history that began in July 4th, 1776, when we founded the light to all nations. And it's something really that an amazing thing came out of that date. It's called the United States of America. In honor of this momentous anniversary, I hope that all countries who find inspiration in our example will join us in renewing our commitment, values, and those values really that we hold so dear. Together, let us defend free speech and free expression. Let us protect religious liberty, including for the most persecuted religion on the planet today. It's called Christianity. And let us safeguard our sovereignty and cherish qualities that have made each of our nations so special, incredible, and extraordinary. In closing, I just want to repeat that immigration and the high cost of so-called green renewable energy is destroying a large part of the free world and a large part of our planet. Countries that cherish freedom are fading fast because of their policies on these two subjects. You need strong borders and traditional energy sources if you are going to be great again. Whether you have come from north or south, east or west, near or far, every leader in this beautiful hall today represents a rich culture, a noble history, and a proud heritage that makes each nation majestic and unique, unlike anything else in human history or any other place on the face of the earth. From London to Lima, from Rome to Athens, from Paris to Seoul, from Cairo to Tokyo and Amsterdam to right here in New York City, we stand on the shoulders of the leaders and legends, generals and giants, heroes and titans who won and built our beloved nations, all of our nations, with their own courage, strength, spirit, and skill. Our ancestors climbed mountains, conquered oceans, crossed deserts, and trekked over wide open plains. They charged into thunderous battles, plunged into grave dangers, and they were soldiers and farmers and workers and warriors and explorers and patriots. They built towns into cities, tribes into kingdoms, ideas into industries, and small islands into mighty empires. You're a part of all of that. They were champions for their people who never gave up and who never, ever gave in. Their values defined our national identities. Their visions forged our magnificent destiny. Everybody in this room is a part of it in your own way. Each of us inherits the deeds and the myths, the triumphs, the legacies of our own heroes and founders who so bravely showed us the way. Our ancestors gave everything for homelands that they defended with pride, with sweat, with blood, with life, and with death. Now the righteous task of protecting the nations that they built belongs to each and every one of us. So together let us uphold our sacred duty to our people and to our citizens. Let us protect their borders, ensure their safety, preserve their cultures, treasure, and traditions, and fight, fight, fight for their precious dreams and their cherished freedoms. And in friendship and really a beautiful vision, let us all work together to build a bright, beautiful planet, a planet that we all share, a planet of peace and a world that is richer, better, and more beautiful than ever before. That can happen. It will happen. It will happen, and I hope it can happen and start right now, right at this moment. We'll turn it around. We're going to make our countries better, safer, more beautiful. We're going to take care of our people. Thank you very much. It's been an honor. God bless the nations of the world. Thank you very much. Bye.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the United States,
Please be seated. Please be seated.
Excellencies, could you please take your seats in due respect to the next speakers? The second row, could you please take your seat right now?
They are walking in between to get them to go.
Please take a seat now. With due respect to the next speakers, I would kindly ask you, gentlemen in the left row, please take your seats. We will continue. Excellencies, as we are receiving queries, I would like to assure you that don't worry, the UN teleprompters are working perfectly. And by this technical note, I would like to call on the next speaker. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Prabowo Subianto, President of the Republic of Indonesia. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Her Excellency Madame Annalena Baerbock, President of the United Nations General Assembly, His Excellency Mr. Moses Abelian, Under Secretary General for General Assembly and Management, Excellencies, Heads of States, Heads of Governments, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great honor for me to stand in this august General Assembly Hall among leaders and representatives who represent almost all of humanity. We differ in race, religion, and nationality, yet we gather together today as one human family. We are here first and foremost as fellow human beings, each created equal, endowed with unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The words of the United Nations Declaration of Independence have inspired democratic movements across continents, including the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the Mexican Revolution, the Chinese Revolution, and Indonesia's own struggle and journey to freedom. It also gave birth to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted by the United Nations in 1948. All men are created equal was the creed that opened the way to unprecedented global prosperity and dignity. And yet, in our own era of scientific and technological triumphs, an era capable of ending hunger, poverty, and environmental ruin, we also continue to face today grave dangers, challenges, and uncertainties. Human folly, fueled by fear, racism, hatred, oppression, and apartheid, threatens our common future. My country knows this pain. For centuries, Indonesians lived under colonial domination, oppression, and slavery. We were treated less than dogs in our own homeland. We Indonesians know what it means to be denied justice and what it means to live in apartheid, to live in poverty, and to be denied equal opportunity. We also knew what solidarity can do in our struggle for independence, in our fight to overcome hunger, disease, and poverty. The United Nations stood with Indonesia and gave us vital assistance. Decisions are made here based on human solidarity by the Security Council, and this assembly gave Indonesia independence, international legitimacy, opened doors, and supported our early development through the efforts of the United Nations Children's Fund, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, the World Health Organization, and many, many other United Nations institutions. And because of that, Indonesia today stands on the cusp of shared prosperity and greater equality and dignity. Madam President, Excellencies, our world today is driven by conflict, injustice, and deepening uncertainty. Every day we witness suffering, genocide, and blatant disregard for international law and human decency. In the face of these challenges, we must not give up. As the United Nations Secretary General said, we cannot give up. We cannot surrender our hopes or our ideals. We must draw closer, not drift apart. Together we must strive to achieve our hopes, our dreams. The United Nations was born from the ashes of the Second World War that claimed scores of millions of lives. It was created to secure peace, security, justice, and freedom for all. We remain committed to internationalism, to multilateralism, and to every effort that strengthens this great institution. Today, Indonesia is nearer than ever before to meeting the sustainable development goals of ending extreme poverty and hunger. Because years ago, this very chamber chose to listen and uphold social and economic justice, we will never forget. And today, we must never be silent while Palestinians are denied that same justice and legitimacy in this very hall. Excellencies, Thucydides warned, the strong do what they can, the weak suffer what they must. We must reject this doctrine. The United Nations exist to reject this doctrine. We must stand for all, the strong and the weak. Might cannot be right. Right must be right. Indonesia today is one of the largest contributors to United Peacekeeping Forces. We believe in the United Nations. We will continue to serve where peace needs guardians, not with just words, but with boots on the ground. If and when the United Nations Security Council and this great assembly decide Indonesia is prepared to deploy 20,000 or even more of our sons and daughters to help secure peace in Gaza or elsewhere, in Ukraine, in Sudan, in Libya, everywhere when the peace needs to be enforced, peace needs to be guarded, we are ready. We will take our share of the burden, not only with our sons and daughters, we are also willing to contribute financially to support the great mission to achieve peace by the United Nations. Madam President, Excellencies, I propose to this Assembly a message of hope and optimism, grounded in action and execution. Today, we heard the speech of Madam President, the President of the United Nations General Assembly. Yes, it is true what she said. Without the International Civil Aviation Organization, will we be here today? Will we sit in this great hall? Without the United Nations, we cannot be safe. No country can feel secure. We need the United Nations, and Indonesia will continue to support the United Nations. Even though we still struggle, but we know the world needs a strong United Nations. The world's population is growing. Our planet is under strain. Food, energy, and water insecurity haunt many nations. We choose to answer these challenges directly at home and to help abroad wherever we can. This year, Indonesia recorded the highest rice production and grain reserves in our history. We are now self-sufficient in rice, and we are starting now to export rice to other nations in need, including providing rice for Palestine. We are building resilient food supply chains, strengthening farmer productivity, investing in climate-smart agriculture to ensure food security for our children and for the children of the world. We are confident in a few years' time, Indonesia will be the granary of the world. As the world's largest island state, we testify before you that we are already experiencing the direct consequences of climate change, particularly the threat of rising sea levels. The sea level on the north coast of our capital city is increasing by 5 centimeters every year. Can you imagine in 10 years? Can you imagine in 20 years? For this, we are forced to build a giant seawall, 480 kilometers in length. It will take us maybe 20 years, but we have no choice. We have to start now. Therefore, we choose to confront climate change not by slogans, but by immediate steps. We are committed to meeting our 2015 Paris Agreement obligations. We aim to achieve net zero emission by 2060, and we are very confident we can achieve net zero emission much earlier. We aim to reforest more than 12 million hectares of degraded forest, to reduce forest degradation, to empower local communities with quality green jobs for the future. Indonesia is shifting decisively from fossil fuel-based development towards renewable-based development. From next year, most of our additional power generation capacity will come from renewables. Our goal is clear: to lift all of our citizens out of poverty and make Indonesia a hub for solutions to food, energy, and water security. Madam President, Excellencies, we live in a time when hatred and violence can seem to be the loudest voices. But beneath this loud noise lies a quieter truth, that every person longs to be safe, to be respected, to be loved, and to leave a better world to their children. Our children are watching. They are learning leadership not from textbook, but from our choices. Today, still, a catastrophic situation in Gaza is unfolding before our eyes. At this very moment, the innocent are crying for help, are crying to be saved. Who will save them? Who will save the innocent? Who will save the old and women? Millions are facing danger at this very moment. As we sit here, they are facing trauma. They are facing irreparable damage to their bodies. They are dying of starvation. Can we remain silent? Will there be no answer to their screams? Will we teach them that the human family can rise to the challenge? Madam President, we must act now. Many speakers have said that. We must stand for a multilateral order where peace, prosperity, and progress are not the privilege of a few, but the right of all. With a strong United Nations, we can build a world where the weak do not suffer what they must, but live the justice that they deserve. Let us continue humanity's great journey of ideals, the selfless aspirations that created the United Nations. Let us use science to uplift, not use science to destroy. Let rising nations help others to lift themselves. I am convinced that the leaders of the great world civilizations of the West, of the East, of the North, of the South, leaders of America, Europe, of India, China, the Islamic world, the whole world, I am convinced they will rise to their role demanded by history. We are all hopeful that the leaders of the world will show great statesmanship, great wisdom, restraint, humility, overcome hate, overcome suspicion. Madam President, distinguished delegates, we are greatly heartened by the events of the last few days, where significant leading countries of the world have chosen to side with history, to choose the right side of history, the path of the moral high ground, the path of rectitude, the path of justice, the path of humanity, to shun hatred, to overcome suspicion, and to avoid the use of violence. The use of violence will beget violence. No one country can bully the whole community of the human family. We may be weak individually, but the sense of oppression, the sense of injustice has proven in the history of mankind that this sense of injustice, this sense of oppression will unite into a strong force that will overcome this oppression, that will overcome this injustice. To close, I would like to reiterate again Indonesia's complete support for the two-state solution in Palestine. We must have an independent Palestine, but we must also recognize, we must also respect, and we must also guarantee the safety and security of Israel. Only then we can have real peace, and no longer hate and no longer suspicion. The only solution is this two-state solution. Two descendants of Abraham must live in reconciliation, peace, and harmony. Arabs, Jews, Muslims, Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, all religions, we must live as one human family. Indonesia is committed to being part of making this vision a reality. Is this a dream? Maybe, but this is the beautiful dream that we must work together towards. Let us work towards this noble goal. Let us continue humanity's journey of hope, a journey started by our forefathers, a journey that we must complete. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom. Om Santi, Santi, Santi Om. Namo Buddhaya. Thank you very much. May God bless us all. May peace be upon us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Indonesia.
Oke, Okezone, tadi kita udah sama-sama menyaksikan langsung bagaimana Presiden Prabowo Subianto menyampaikan pidatonya. Walaupun tadi agak sedikit ngaret ya kita bilang, tapi akhirnya sudah berlangsung dengan baik. Dan kurang lebih tadi Presiden Prabowo Subianto ini sudah menyampaikan berkaitan dengan misalnya hak yang sama, kemudian Indonesia itu memiliki hak yang sama, kemudian juga keberhasilan swasembada pangan, dan yang paling utama adalah soal tetap menyatakan perdamaian dan percaya pada PBB. Itu tadi yang kita garis bawahi. Nah, sebelum menutup segmen kali ini, kita mau minta dulu tanggapan Bang Andi yang udah standby dari tadi juga. Melihat seperti apa tadi Presiden Prabowo Subianto menyampaikan pidatonya. Bang Andi, langsung aja, bagaimana menanggapinya?
Baik, saya pikir ini sangat menarik apa yang disampaikan oleh Pak Presiden, Pak Prabowo. Karena pada saat kita melihat kursi-kursi delegasi sudah berkurang signifikan, tapi beliau masih menjaga tone-nya ya, tetap semangat, berkobar-kobar ya, tegas ya, menunjukkan bahwa Indonesia konsisten dengan perjuangan multilateralisme ini. Dan beliau sudah sampaikan Indonesia konsisten, komit terhadap internationalism dan multilateralism. Dan tadi kita garis bawahi beberapa kata kunci ya, seperti misalkan beliau sampaikan soal food security ya, itu juga mengilustrasikan bahwa Indonesia sudah struggle untuk food security ya. Beliau sudah menyampaikan tadi bagaimana kita swasembada beras, Indonesia bahkan siap mengekspor ya, dan sudah mengekspor ke Palestina juga untuk memberikan bantuan. Juga beliau sampaikan juga soal transisi energi ya, artinya pidato beliau ini justru mengcounter ya apa yang telah disampaikan oleh Presiden Trump berulang kali seakan-akan mendegradasi PBB dalam konteks SDGs dan juga dalam konteks green development gitu kan. Indonesia justru sebaliknya, kita menyadari, beliau sampaikan bahwa kita mengalami kenaikan permukaan air laut gitu kan, dan itu beliau sampaikan bahwa Indonesia saat ini sedang membangun Great Wall, Great Sea Wall, Giant Sea Wall itu ya. Nah ini merupakan semacam consideration kepada para peserta delegasi bahwa climate change betul-betul nyata. Apalagi Indonesia tadi dikatakan bahwa negara kepulauan, kita mengalami betul soal dampak dan konsekuensi dari climate change ini. Dan tadi juga beliau sampaikan soal human and women, ya, women and children ya, tentang bagaimana kesetaraan, kesamaan ya, antara weak dan strong itu harus equal. Jadi pada intinya, pada substansinya beliau ingin sampaikan bahwa UN ini harus inklusif. Harus inklusif ya. Kalau kita ingin mempertahankan eksistensi, relevansi dari UN ini, maka prinsip inklusivitas tadi harus dilestarikan sehingga tidak ada lagi negara-negara major powers yang mendapatkan treatment yang lebih spesial daripada negara-negara yang kecil atau negara-negara yang lemah ya. Terakhir menurut saya tadi adalah yang bagian closing tadi, bahwa Indonesia secara tegas ya two state solution. Jadi saya pikir majority dari tema pidato Pak Presiden Prabowo pada sidang umum PBB 80 ini adalah identik dengan tadi, kita memperjuangkan two state model solution ini untuk agar perdamaian tadi, bahkan tadi Presiden siap ya bahwa kita akan mengirimkan ribuan pasukan perdamaian, kita akan kirimkan dimanapun Indonesia siap. Artinya bahwa Indonesia konsisten ya dan komit terhadap cita-cita perdamaian, meskipun beliau tadi sampaikan bahwa memang ini mimpi gitu kan, tapi di endingnya dia bilang kalau ini adalah beautiful dream, kalau ini adalah mimpi indah kita, ayo kita perjuangkan bersama-sama. Saya pikir itu yang menarik untuk kita garis bawahi. Itu Mas Afif dan Mbak Elsa. Baik.
Kita akhirnya sudah sampai di penghujung segmen. Karena walaupun tadi ya sempat tadi waktunya agak ngaret juga dari sana, tapi tidak apa-apa, tadi sepakat juga sama apa yang disampaikan Mas Andi ya Mas Kafit ya. Ini suatu pidato yang
menyeluruh, bisa dibilang dari mulai perdamaian sampai semua hal yang ada di Indonesia disampaikan.
Semua aspek disorot ya. Ya, kita harapkan Okezoners dengan adanya pidato Presiden Prabowo Subianto ini sekaligus menjadi pengingat juga bahwa Indonesia memiliki komitmen yang tinggi mendukung perdamaian, dan semua program yang disampaikan oleh Presiden Prabowo juga satu hal lagi adalah bahwa kita semua itu memiliki hak yang sama ya Mas ya. Nah, dan kita sudah sampai di penghujung segmen, dan tentunya jangan lupa selalu saksikan The Daily Buzz setiap hari. Apa Mas Kafit?
Senin sampai Jumat jam 16.
Ya. Dan kalau Okezone mungkin punya narasumber yang mau diajak ke sini main, boleh komen-komen di bawah dan jangan lupa selalu like, komen dan subscribe, share ke teman-teman juga atau ke semua keluarga. Dan Bang Andi, thank you so much sudah hadir bersama kami di Daily Buzz kali ini.
Semuanya bareng-bareng dari kita dari sore tadi sehabis
dari jam 7 ya. Thank you so much Okezone. Gue Esra Barita dan partner gue
Hafid Mardiansyah.
Pamit dan bye-bye.
Selamat terima kasih semuanya. Terima kasih.